are dipping the toe in the water, trying to get to grips with this new asset class. Others are embracing it in a more wholehearted way with a little bit more conviction. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've also got crypto natives who are branching into, what has traditionally been the realm of traditional financial services. So to unpack, current developments, gating issues, and also look at what lies ahead, we've got this stellar lineup of panelists. We've got Lily, who is the Chief Operating Officer from Kobo, which is a global custody platform. We've got Luke Froelich. Did I get it right? Sorry, close. Who is the Global Head of Digital Assets for Fidelity International. We've got Philip Gillespie, who is a Managing Partner for AWR Capital, which is an algorithmic hedge fund and financial services company. We've got Jihan Chu, who is the founder of Kinetic, a blockchain VC company and also a crypto trading company. And last but certainly not least, we've got Harry Mann, who is a partner at Matrix Partners in China, which is a technology-focused VC firm. So to kick things off today, we might start with you, if we can, Luke. I want to talk about banking. Obviously, a lot of focus in recent weeks on global banking issues. Jamie Dimon, in his recent letter to investors, commented that he doesn't think that the crisis is over. It's probably going to take a couple of years to resolve. Closer to crypto specifically, we've seen the shuttering of the crypto-friendly banks. We've seen, it's caused a lot of issues, I guess, for a lot of our clients that are in the crypto space. We've seen, people talking about, choke point 2.0 and, conspiracy theories about whether this is really a concerted effort on the part of the government to really isolate crypto industry and, kind of freeze it out of access to traditional banking services. I mean, from your perspective, how do you see this banking crisis affecting the institutional adoption of digital assets? Do you think this is something that is, going to hinder further adoption and integration between TradFi and crypto, or do you think that this is perhaps an opportunity for services and for roles to be redefined?
So, to set the scene, I think this banking crisis is like the last act in a series of events that have been weighing negatively on the adoption of digital assets. And frequently for the wrong reason. Wrong reason in the sense that there is this frequent and typical amalgamation, combination of cryptocurrencies with other aspects of the digital asset space which are more practical. If you think of tokenization of real-world assets like carbon credit or trade finance. So where does that leave us? I think that leaves us at a crossroad. On one side of the road, you have the market participants who might feel vindicated by this last round of negative news. They might say, I told you so. It was all a big scam. And they might even dip their head deeper into the sand. Other leaders might still shy away from digital assets, thinking that, well, at this juncture, it's still more of a career risk, or they might feel simply uncomfortable moving into this space because it's new, because it's very tech-driven, and because it's moving extremely fast. And other leaders are simply busy with other stuff, right? We're also in an environment where there is a lot of pressure on cost and restructuring. So that's one side of the road. On the other side of this crossroad, you have leaders who have been, for some of them for years, studying the digital asset space, looking at what is actually happening. And they are in a position to distinguish between the opportunity and the noise. And they have right now a massive opportunity to help accelerate and promote the adoption of digital assets. Because there are a lot of skilled tech people that are available. The technology itself is also much more affordable. So they are in a great position right now to act. Part of this opportunity set is also the possibility of rethinking the role within the financial industry. Who does what? Right? You could think of asset manager slowly doing part of the job of an investment bank, for instance, like issuing assets. You could have wealth manager starting to do what asset manager are traditional being doing, like building fund and managing them. So, by the way, this was to be expected, right? This is the whole key core tenet of blockchain technologies to redefine the role of intermediaries. So now, Going back to this image of crossroad, if you think of the acceleration in crypto prices that we have seen, if you look at the acceleration of projects around tokenization, like tokenization of bonds, if you look at the acceleration in the initiative related to CBDC and stablecoin, I think it's pretty clear to me on which side of this world you want to be.
Okay, so a lot of opportunity and I guess a bit of shifting boundaries, right, between what the traditional camps have done and emerging of what they might be doing in future. So, Philip, can we chat to you for a little bit? We've certainly heard from a lot of our institutional clients and contacts that they are interested in virtual assets, but a lot of them are not necessarily comfortable already, for whatever reason, with having direct exposure. So a lot of them really are focusing more on derivatives, synthetic instruments, and from a fund manager perspective, we've also seen a lot of fund managers looking to set up funds that are, again, focusing more on virtual asset-related derivatives with, a pretty broad range of trading strategies, whether it's, high frequency or quant or algo or whatever. And for some of these institutions and fund managers, particularly the licensed ones, they are a little bit challenged in the sense that there aren't necessarily a lot of regulated trading venues at the moment for virtual asset derivatives. So, from your perspective, I mean, what do you think, or how do you see the opportunity changing for funds that are, focusing on virtual asset derivatives? And are there any kind of key challenges or particular obstacles that fund managers are going to have? And, how that might change, I guess, as we start to see more regulated trading venues coming online, which really have that institutional grade offering that can hopefully get institutional investors more comfortable.
Sure. I think there's quite a bit to unpack in that one question. But one thing that I can start with is probably the issues that a lot of firms and hedge funds and everybody else has when they come into crypto. I think first and foremost, as everybody in the audience knows, last year there was a lot of credit issues relating to trading on exchanges and elsewhere. And I think when you couple that with custody risk, a lot of TradFi firms tend to shy away from engaging in crypto through spot trading. And that's why this derivatives is definitely where a lot of the TradFi guys want to go. You don't have to deal with the custody. You still have to deal with the counterparty risk, which is something that needs to be developed in the crypto ecosystem. But the interesting thing is, to the earlier question about the banking crisis, when you have these crises and when you have the fiat on-off ramp disappear or get disrupted, the arbitrage opportunity starts to increase again. And this is something that I think it's a very purely trading oriented opportunity. But for a lot of traders, when you look at the crypto ecosystem, especially this year, right now, a lot of crypto prices are going up, but also the basis and the arbitrage opportunities are increasing because now you have disruption in the fiat on-off ramp. And these are reasons why a lot of guys like us and other kind of, hedge funds, liquidity provider, market makers are very keen to come into crypto despite the credit risk, despite all of these other things happening, because the opportunity is increasing rapidly as well. Interesting enough, as the industry matures and the ecosystem matures, these opportunities will shrink in terms of basis and arbitrage opportunity, but it makes it safer for everybody else to come in. So we're like the pioneers coming in, providing the liquidity, trading, making sure the ecosystem functions, and taking those ARB opportunities, and trading it. But liquidity is there, and I think one of the biggest things that we have to tackle on the crypto side is definitely having credit intermediaries and other kinds of more regulated exchanges to make everybody feel safe to come in.
Okay. So, I mean, you touched there on custody, which is a good segue to my next question for Lily. I mean, custody certainly has been a particular pain point, I think, for a lot of TradFi institutions. A lot of them really have been wanting to find a way to get exposure, but just not comfortable with custodying crypto assets directly themselves. And we also have heard calls from various parts of the market, I guess, for the introduction of some kind of licensing regime that is tailored specifically for crypto asset custodians. So how do you, I mean, how have custody services, I guess, evolved over the last couple of years to try to meet the concerns of institutional investors and get them more comfortable? And do you think that we actually need a dedicated licensing regime for crypto asset custodians in order to get the institutional investors more comfortable?
Custody in traditional finance context usually means safe box. But custody in digital asset context is much more complex. It involves blockchain technology, cryptography technology, cybersecurity issues. And in order to understand the evolving role of custody, we will need to look at least three factors: users, technologies, and applications. So at the user side, you see the user number has reached 420 million, according to AAA. And more importantly than the number of users itself is the composition of users. It has evolved from cyberpunks, geeks, programmers, to funds, and even growing numbers of big institutions and trade advice. And these users will definitely have different requirements for custody, including role delegation, the distributed key management, like Philip mentioned, and workflow integration. So at the technology side, from Bitcoin to smart contract on Ethereum to some other alternative smart contract-based blockchain, we see more and more layer ones, application-specific blockchains, and even modular blockchains with roll-ups. So a multi-chain, multi-layer world will definitely give rise to assets, users, application fragmentation. So this calls for custody service providers to come up with unified solutions for a better use experience. And I think AI technology will definitely help to bring it to the next level to help the user experience. So at application side, before 2020, the top applications on blockchains are mostly exchanges, payment service providers. But just within a 1, 2, 3 short span of years, smart contract already fueled explosion of numerous on blockchain applications. So we see NFT, DeFi, DAO. Each of them has become multi-billion-dollar sector on its own right. So, and with currently more than 4,000 apps, the concept of Web3 is definitely going mainstream. So with this changing conversation of custody and what is required from custody, the inevitable future of a custody solution is you need to provide a unified user experience. You need to provide full stack services from full custody based on HSM to co-managed MPC solution to decentralized smart contract-based custody solution. So that's all the challenge. It's very challenging for the custody providers. And they also require the custody to provide with like distributed key management solution instead of centralized custody solution as well. And you also need to provide to institutional users with institution-grade programmability to accommodate workflow, to accommodate team collaboration. So as for the licensing regime, I do think we need a specific licensing regime for custody. But as I just discussed, custody for digital assets is very different, and the regulators will need to keep up with the latest technology development and leverage technology solution to oversee crypto activities. For example, there is no way for traditional audit to verify exchange proof of reserve in real time, but MPC technology can provide an alternative solution for regulators to verify the proof of reserve in real time. And also the off-exchange settlement network can help the traders to trade without the need to pre-fund their account in exchange. So that's what I think about the question.
Thanks, Lily. So a lot of work, I guess, still to be done in terms of the custody side. And again, that challenge that the regulators always have of trying to catch up to what's happening in the industry, which frankly, they can never keep pace, but it's something that they'll have to, I guess, continue to grapple with. So Harry, I want to chat to you a little bit and switch gears. Obviously, we've had this policy statement in Hong Kong late last year where the government pretty emphatically has said, we're embracing Web3, we're embracing digital assets and crypto. There's been a lot of conjecture, I think, amongst the industry about whether or not we can read the tea leaves. What does this mean for the future, perhaps, of crypto activity in Hong Kong? And, sorry, in China in particular? What do you think about this? I mean, do you think that Hong Kong is the sandbox for China to, explore regulation and digital assets? Should we expect, or do you expect that at some point in the future there might be a gradual easing, perhaps, of the currently quite strict anti-crypto position in China? And if so, are there any particular opportunities that you think TradFi should have their eye on as this all unfolds?
Very good question. So first of all, I feel myself very honored to be on this panel because I was born and raised in Hong Kong, so I've been here all the time, and it was very good to see Hong Kong rising up to be one of the major, I would say, crypto and blockchain hubs of Asia. Seeing a lot of the government entities and top level people coming down to support Web3 and the development of digital assets in the world. It's a very good gesture. So although I'm from Hong Kong, I've been living in China and working in China for more than 20 years. So I kind of like being able to read signs of both sides, how they see it. So first of all, about Hong Kong, right? So I do have a lot of friends that are currently working in FS, in HKMA, and in SFC. From my read and from my conversation with them, I do believe that this time they're really in for real. You actually seldom see, government officials to be that active, coming into all these conferences, doing all the talks, welcoming all the people to come in with open arms. This is kind of like the first time that I see, all the way up top from John Lee to Paul Chan and then to everybody that has been fully committed. From what I see, what is happening right now is, they have been preparing this for quite some time. It's not that they don't want to welcome, but for the longest time they have not set up the boundaries and what the rules and what they want it to be. Now that seems like everything has been settled down and it's like ready the right time for them to welcome people to come into Hong Kong and to embrace digital assets. That's my personal read. And this time they have been a lot more vocal and liberate too. So from my point of view, I think this is a very good sign. When I was growing up, Hong Kong used to be one of the most important city of the entire China economy, right? It used to contribute to more than 50% of the entire China GDP. Now that it's been shrinking down because China has been evolved, it's to the certain extent that it comes into a much less significance in terms of GDP contribution. But now with the new evolvement of Web3 and digital assets, it's from what I see is becoming more and more, playing a more important role coming back to the China's, I would say, landscape of how they want it to be in future and how they want to play in the global world in terms of digital asset evolvement in the long run. Whether or not China will open up, it's really, really hard to read. I mean, there are so many concerns that the top-down government is currently have in terms of tokenization, especially with RMB being not freely tradable currency around the world, having open token economy within China will jeopardize the entire protection of that. So that will take a much longer time for that to evolve. But what I've been seeing in China is blockchain versus crypto are two different worlds. The China government is highly embracing blockchain. There's so many things that's happening within, top down in terms of how they study it. They're launching, electronic RMBs and all these, infrastructures in place. So that will be what I see will be the China's first step into digital economy. And whether or not that will through Hong Kong, no matter how you want to put it as a sandbox or a trial, it could be, one of the few tiny little steps that is going to take in the future when they, a longer time they want to open up to the world. So with that, I think, I do see that there will be a lot of opportunities happening in Hong Kong alone. It will be good for a lot of these, international companies and also Chinese blockchain companies to lend themselves in Hong Kong to build out the infrastructure. That's number one. So in terms of traditional finance, what are the opportunities out there? I do see that, one of the advantage of Hong Kong being one of the leading financial hub of the world, that has a lot of existence, financial institutions that have done a lot of things for the last 100 years, like the HSBC, the Citibank, they've all landed themselves in Hong Kong for a long time. With them embracing the digital world will probably, what I see, be the next big step, allowing normal, Web2 customers to be able to gain access to digital assets, to do trading, to have custodian solutions, will probably be the opportunities of what I see in the next 1 or 2 years, evolving, traditional finance together with, the new digital finance world.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess one space to watch in terms of what China does in whether or not it opens up, but certainly a lot of opportunity for Hong Kong being, again, positioned as that gateway for access to that capital. Okay, and so Jinghan, can we chat to you a little bit? I mean, you obviously were a very early investor in the space. You've been through quite a few market cycles and the trials and tribulations that come with that. All of us have witnessed in the last few years this exponential growth, I guess, in the adoption of digital assets and crypto and I guess what I would call the gradual migration of crypto from being, very much fringe alternative asset to something that is now on the pathway towards mainstream adoption. In this background, given the current regulatory momentum that we have, I mean, do you see the evolution of crypto and alternative blockchain paradigms in TradFi and beyond to drive adoption?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, as the first blockchain VC in Hong Kong dating back to, 2016 and having been invested in over 250 companies, we have a little bit of a privileged position of just having a lot of cycles and a lot of kind of mileage behind us to really zoom out and view the space in the future in context. And so I think there's two things that I would say. First, there's a convergence happening. And then second, there's a forking happening. So I'll explain what I mean. There's a convergence happening where we talk about things like TradFi and DeFi as if they're these two separate things. And I think there is DeFi and there is TradFi, and they are very separate. But what we actually start to see is not only are these two things coming together into whatever you want to call it, Finance 2.5 or Web 2.5, but in addition, the assets, the underlying assets that we're trading are starting to converge not only as financial and currency instruments and monetary instruments, but actually utility instruments. And so, whereas before the instruments really used to be monetary or kind of trading instruments, or they used to be commodities, or they used to be real-world assets like stocks or real estate, it's all converging now. And I actually think that this idea of a TradFi kind of emergent DeFi, it's a little bit of a misnomer. What we're really going to be seeing is almost a generalization of underlying assets which have powers on top, which can be used for currency, which can be used for collateral, which can be used for within DeFi, but also which can be used for many other things like content, like intellectual property. So one example could be where you have, let's say, take a piece of real estate, which traditionally would be more of a static asset. Once you tokenize it and you start to add a programmable layer in terms of security tokens on top, you can start to use it in a programmable way where it becomes potentially a currency that you can pay for things, where it also becomes collateral for other types of instruments, where it could also signal a deed in the metaverse. And so you start to cross all these different areas, and actually you converge all these different use cases, which previously used to be, oh, this is utility, oh, this is metaverse, oh, this is kind of DeFi, and this is TradFi. I think we'll start to see all of it blend together. And the implication for TradFi companies and also DeFi companies is that they're all going to glom into one. They're actually all going to have to deal with the same types of issues around regulation, around liquidity, around service provision like custody, all at once. And so I think that we're going to really have an interesting time trying to figure out, what types of, service providers and vendors will dominate that space and will take the lead. But I do think that we'll start to compress the space from two separate types of camps, which will not only kind of merge into one, but will expand the overall use case of the assets themselves. So I think we need to take a really good look at the assets, because it's also very clear to me that security tokens is really the big prize, right? Security tokens, stocks, real estate, etc. The market cap of that is, hundreds, if not thousands of times the existing market cap of cryptocurrency. And for me, I think that it's great what the Hong Kong government is doing in signaling its openness. But for me, I think the real long-term game for the Hong Kong government is not actually about altcoins. It's not actually about cryptocurrency. It's actually about the future of transformation of capital markets, full stop. That's really what they're playing for, and they're setting the groundwork now, whether it's with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, whether it's with OSL or Hashkey and kind of what they're doing. That's really what we're going for. And that's what you should expect. So that's the convergence part. Now the separation part is a little bit different. I enjoyed what Harry was saying about in China. I think we're also going to see a separation in terms of a cryptocurrency-driven blockchain space and a non-cryptocurrency blockchain space. And part of the thesis here is really around something that we've observed, and everybody who's in crypto for the last 9 years has observed, that a lot of enterprise and governments actually aren't adopting cryptocurrency-powered applications at scale, because the cryptocurrency itself has too much friction, has too much cost and complexity, even from a UI and UX standpoint, as well as from a price and regulatory standpoint, to be widely adopted. So if you look around at like the Fortune 500, maybe 5 or 10 of them are actually even a little bit going into the crypto space or the NFT space, right? So what does that tell you? It means that there actually is a desire and a utility for blockchain technology, but as Harry was saying, it might not, in China at least, it might not be with cryptocurrency enabled. I think what we're going to see is the emergence of a new paradigm. And that new paradigm does not displace and does not undermine cryptocurrency. It actually expands. The first 10 years of blockchain and crypto history were about cryptocurrency-powered chains. Ethereum, Polkadot, everything that we love. But I think the next 10 years will be an expansion of that story. We're going to go to Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 is going to build on Chapter 1. And Chapter 2 will be blockchain environments which abstract out utility coins. They will still have stable coins, whether it's an ECNY, or whether it's a USDC, or whether it's a digital dollar. But we will start to see decentralized applications, open source applications on chains which do not use altcoins or cryptocurrencies as gas. And I think what's happening in China in particular with the BSN, the Blockchain-Based Services Network, and the chain that we also support, which is called Open Permissioned Ethereum, these are the types of chains where you're going to start to see enterprise and sovereigns and banks, I think banks hopefully, start to deploy applications at scale. Because once you remove the conversation of cryptocurrency, it changes the conversation around utility for blockchain from an existential board-level conversation to a mid-level IT decision, where a mid-level IT manager can green-light use of a non-cryptocurrency blockchain environment. So I think that's what we're seeing in China, and certainly with China Mobile and China UnionPay behind the BSN, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I actually think that with companies like HSBC and Prenetics and Emperor Group here in Hong Kong going forward and building applications in the sandbox on the Spartan network, which is a non-cryptocurrency network, I actually think that that will be the next stage. And that's really where there's an incredible amount of potential in terms of investment, in terms of kind of founders, as well as in terms of custody and as well as in terms of regulation. So I think that's where we see the future going. And I do think that Hong Kong is extremely well placed to take advantage of that because it is a gateway, and it's very clear that the Chinese government is positioning it as the crypto gateway, but I think that expands to the overall digital asset gateway for China, for the rest of the world. And it's a very exciting time to be here.
Thanks for that insight. Very interesting, and actually a great segue to the last question. I know we only have just a couple of minutes left, so I do want to just kind of get one final response from each of our panelists, just very quickly. Do you think that TradFi is changing crypto? Or do you think that crypto is changing TradFi? I mean, to Jihan's point right now, thematically, we're not really seeing so much this integration of two things at the opposite ends of the spectrum, but rather a merger and this convergence in the middle. So what do you think? Do you think that one's changing the other? And I guess what do you see as the key opportunities or challenges for the greater integration or convergence of these two? Luke, can we start with you?
I see digital asset more as an evolution of TradFi, and actually the underlying technology of digital asset enabling what TradFi should be actually doing. And to some extent, allowing traditional finance to deliver on its objective, which is to feed the consumer, not necessarily the service provider. But digital asset is only one part of the equation. What really excites me is to consider the new tech stack that's being built. We look at Internet of Things devices, IoT devices, collect information, AI that makes sense of this information and start structuring them. And then the blockchain layer that allow to create this infrastructure to store this information, exchange value. So that's the new tech stack that is slowly being put in place. That's, I think, the exciting part. In terms of opportunity, I think this is the opportunity of creating financial services that actually align with the need of consumers. And in terms of the challenges, well, clearly, if you start reshuffling roles in the traditional finance, in the establishment, this is going to cause a lot of disruption. There are a lot of risks associated to that. They probably need additional level of regulation to protect consumers, but that's a natural evolution. So I think it's worth the pain.
Philip, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so who's changing who's a bit of a chicken and egg, but I think you hit it right on the head that the convergence is going to happen from tokenization. And it's not just assets, it's not just real estate, it's also service, future cash flow. And you tend to have these financial changes happen when it makes sense from both revenue and cost perspective. And tokenization makes sense from both revenue and cost perspective. And I think that's going to be the main driver in the convergence. And it's not so much about crypto, it's how do we tokenize and use blockchain and everything else to both cut costs down in these financial instrument issuance and generate even further revenue. So I think that's definitely where the biggest convergence is going to happen.
Lily, your thoughts on this one?
I see the intensified trend for the two of them to integrate with each other. Like the past 2 years actually are the years for big institutions to start to adopt digital assets, but that's also the 2 years that big institutions suffer the most from the CeFi meltdowns and the DeFi hackings. And just when you thought the narrative of crypto is collapsing because of all the scandals, the headlines are taken by the banks, which are actually the cornerstone of TradFi. And people start to think, and after meditating on so many force and the rise of many crypto entrepreneurs and ventures, they start to realize some scandals are actually from human greed and internal control instead of the technology and the vision itself. So, and as for the integration, I think TradFi still controls social resources, impact, voices on the market, legitimacy, But DeFi, crypto and blockchain has very good and promising narrative to serve the underserved and the unprivileged. It's a promising narrative to revive TradeFi. So blockchain and crypto can rely on TradeFi, on the mass adoption and the legitimacy, and the TradeFi can rely on crypto and blockchain's promising narrative to revive its power. And I do see Hong Kong as the best venue to integrate both of them with its advanced traditional financial market depth and a very advanced regulatory framework and commitment from all levels of government officials and agencies to commit to Web3.
Harry, any last thoughts before they shoo us off the stage?
Yeah, I think let's talk a little bit about challenges. I think what we all need is to build a better infrastructure to make this to happen. And we're very lucky to have a lot of builders out here that wants to understand the market and wants to open up and get building the infrastructure, making it to work. I hate to say that, why is it so hard to just to buy Bitcoins, just to hold Bitcoins? And why do we need custodian solutions? Can somebody make all these happen as smooth as what we've been experiencing in the Web2 world? Once those infrastructure products are all being built, I think we can come into the emergence of what we talk about TradeFi and DeFi.
Yeah, just as a last comment, I think that TradFi, if you want to think of it that way, including regulation, is really what's going to be pushing on the crypto space. And I guess my last comment is really just like an outreach to the founders out there. I really want you to understand what's going to happen the next cycle, which is don't get mystified by the complexity and the hand wave of cryptocurrency as an industry, right? The TradFi is actually going to be pushing on crypto because crypto as an industry is going to have to prove that it actually provides value that people are going to pay for, right? Revenue. There has to be that full circle and full loop. So if you're building a company out there and you have a cryptocurrency in your stack, please figure out a way that people are actually going to pay money for a service that you're developing, because that's actually the ultimate accountability for our industry. We have to actually provide utility that's going to make money, real money, not just crypto money. Otherwise, we're just spinning your wheels, and that's where TradFi actually takes over, because they're actually all about money, and we are all about technology and aspiration and vision, but we actually have to convert it into real money, revenue-generating value.
Thanks very much. So we're out of time, folks. Please, a round of applause for our panelists with their fantastic insights. I think consensus is we're definitely all very bullish on Web3 in Hong Kong and also in China being the gateway to that capital. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to our speakers for an engaging and insightful discussion. Thank you very much. And please be seated. Coming up next, there will be another roundtable discussion. And without further ado, may I invite the following speakers on stage. May I invite Anthony Sa, co-founder and CEO of Finoverse, Lennox Lai, managing director of Global Institutional Business at OKX, Chris Yu, co-founder and CEO of Signal Plus, Ben Elbaz, head of ecology at Hashkey Group, Lawrence Zhu, chairman of VSFG, and Tiong Hong, co-founder and CEO of Satori Research. These speakers will discuss the past, present, and future of CeFi and give us an overview of the centralized finance landscape. And Anthony will be the moderator of this roundtable discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a round of applause to our guest on stage. And moving on, I'll pass the floor to Anthony. Over to you, Anthony.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to have this conversation taking place on stage with so smart group of people next to me. My name is Anthony Sarr. I'm the founder of Finaverse, and many of you know us from the Hong Kong FinTech Week, which we've been organizing for the last 7 years. And today's conversation will be around centralized finance, but maybe beyond. And I would like to just jump in and kick off the conversation with, by introducing Ben, our first speaker, Ben Elbaz, Head of Ecosystems at the Kashki Group. And by the way, amazing event, really great job, very well done. So, as you might know, Kashki just announced its centralized exchange launch in Hong Kong. I would like to ask Ben, what, from your perspective, is the most critical problem that we all need to think about going forward for the industry?
Yeah, no, I think everyone else will have a chance to kind of introduce themselves and go through different things. So I'll just talk quite briefly and then let things go through here. I think what's really exciting about the next year is kind of thinking about how do we solve the problems that have happened over the last 2 years, right? I think especially in the centralized crypto financial infrastructure. I think everyone in this room has seen what's happened over the past year and a half, 2 years, and I think what's really interesting and exciting about this industry, right? If you look back over the past few cycles, like everyone in this industry is always continually trying to think about how to improve failures. So I think from everyone in this panel and everyone in the room, there's been a lot of really deep thinking about how centralized exchanges, centralized custody providers, and every other piece of the centralized crypto infrastructure is trying to solve some of these counterparty risks that have been happening over the past few years. So I think a big topic of this panel, I think a big topic of the industry right now is what can all these entities and businesses that are providing these services improve over time.
Yes, thank you, Ben. And by the way, interesting fact about Ben's biography before Kashki Group. Back in his days in 2017 in Stanford University, he co-founded the largest network of blockchain community that became the most influential in the Bay Area. And in his spare time, he's now very much immersed with the ChatGPT experimentation. Next, I think I would like to ask Theon, co-founder and CEO of Sator Research. We talked a lot about the trust, losing trust, rebuilding the trust. How do you feel where we are now at this point?
Well, to echo what Ben was just said, right? Like last year, 2022 was a year where we had two major events. Well, probably 2 or 3 major events. You have the 3 ACs, and then you have FTX going down, right? So I think in terms of trust, the institutional investors are really being very careful. So trust and transparency is so important going forward that I think the whole industry has to kind of find a way to regain that back. And maybe it's a little bit controversial over here, but one thing is among polite circles out there, and again, I know there's many fans of Binance out there, but Binance is it's an amazing exchange, but it has 62% of spot transactions and 63 to 64% of derivatives. I think if all these flows are kind of within 1 or 2 institutions, that's not really good. So I think one way going forward within the 12 to 18 months, one way to build more trust in the system is to borrow something from the United States in 1982. You split Binance, or back then 1982, they split AT&T to 9 baby bells. So if you split Binance globally to 9 baby Binance or 9 baby CZs, then perhaps the system can be a bit more stable. I know it's controversial, but I think that has to be done at some stage.
That's interesting. I think CZ will be speaking at the event sometime later. We can definitely ask him about his views on 9 baby CZs. But it's a good point. And by the way, Theon, he's running this digital asset platform specializing in crypto trading. But before that, he spent 16 years in Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan. But one interesting thing about him is that in his spare time, he spends on mastering himself in martial arts, in particular one that is called White Crane Wing Chun.
That's in preparation for being controversial in this world.
Yeah, don't mess around with them. Build on this. I think we started to touch this point about the dominance of one the largest, big players in the centralized finance. I would like to turn to Lennox from OKX. Obviously, you just announced big plans in Hong Kong. How do you see this ecosystem will be evolving? Where we are in terms of trust, rebuilding this trust? What you as an exchange can do to make it better?
Yeah, obviously, being regulated is just a good sign, or what we call the beginning. But on OKX's vision is crypto plus blockchain could be sufficient. Well, we're having sufficient technological component to achieve similar level or even better level of transparency versus traditional finance. That's what we believe. And that's how we invest on a technology is called proof of reserve. And that's why we invest technology like ZK in terms of proof of reserve, because we believe those kind of accounting principles that were adopted so well in TradFi, probably a majority of them can be executed purely on blockchain, but at a fraction of cost.
So increasing transparency, and that's what I think advocates of DeFi actually is always referring to. Back to CZ, if we mention him, his point was always that DeFi will dominate in this space in a matter of years. Would you agree with this point?
I don't think centralized operators will be vanished in a couple of years, because centralized operator is an ideal candidate for something that operates locally, something as a gatekeeper, as a regulated gatekeeper, that's even based in locally. So we are very likely with the technological evolve, like our TPS on blockchain 10 times bigger, and the e-commerce is 10 times bigger. But even so, we're going to share a global universal marketplace in a global scale, but in a local scale, in terms of local marketing, local solicitations, local regulations, local hosting of server and wallet, it's going to be centralized component within it. So central component going to the gatekeeper to access a giant, massive, permissionless, probably at a global marketplace, which is called DeFi. That's really likely to happen in a couple of years.
And thanks, Lennox. And also one interesting thing about Lennox that many of you don't know, he's actually a professional Gandan model master. It takes 6 months to build one model, by the way. I just learned. It's exciting. I think let's maybe switch to Chris. Chris Yu, co-founder and CEO of SinglePlus. And based on what Lennox was referring to, and the importance of regulation, I guess, that we will be talking more. And I bet there are quite a few regulators in the room are watching this conversation. What will be your message to them? How we can prevent what happened before from what we've seen in this last 12 months in the market?
Sure. So before I go to that, I 100% agree with Lennox on the DeFi CeFi. I do agree CeFi infrastructure cannot be vanished in a couple of years. Because we are 100% focused on derivatives, there are some complicated calculations which cannot be deployed on-chain yet. At least for the next couple of years, we think it's impossible. So CeFi infrastructure is definitely essential. And honestly, I think there will be a bridge between DeFi and CeFi. Personally, I think I don't look at the DeFi and CeFi 100% separately. The CeFi part has to be more proper or even regulated to support the DeFi features to take advantage of the DeFi. That's what I think on the CeFi DeFi. But to your question, so I do believe on the last year, as an example, on the two crashes, besides the proper risk management, proper risk management as in internal control or regulation or the internal compliance, we also need a better risk management engine to smartly taking leverage. If you look at the 3AC or FTX, at the end of the day, they got crashed also because they took unsmart leverage on the linear stuff, right? I do know leveraging is actually the most attractive features in crypto, especially for retail. You can easily leverage 20, 50 times to make decent return.
That's how everyone does, no? When the bull market.
Exactly. But then after FTX, I do start to see more people start to realize on the leverage part how to manage the market risk as well. So taking leverage smartly instead of just taking the linear punt on the 20, 40 times the leverage. And therefore, we believe in the secondary market or the trading space, the next one that are going to be explosive growth is on the option space, where you can smartly taking leverage of 5 to 10 times easily, but it's safe. I mean, you have limited downside for sure. And the beauty of the option instrument is it can cater all class of investors. And you are a real money investor, it takes you like 1 to 2% to buy a protection. And on your loans, where you don't need to worry about next crash. Okay, if you are retail, you can also buy options to leverage 5 to 10 times to make decent return. And of course, you are a professional investor. Options are the most attractive instrument as well because you can calculate the path of the. So it's not like buy or sell. It's like it going up or down, and how much and when. The path actually matters. So that's the beauty of the derivatives. I think that's the next one of the next focus for the next couple of years in my perspective.
Okay, yes, so the leverage, the risk management, how we can prevent this from happening, a reckless leveraging.
Oh, speaking of that, there is one of the most successful strategy in TradFi space is you smartly leveraging based on your P&L. Let's say you make $10, you use $2, $3 to do leverage, and that $10 comes from some steady strategy, either carry trade or arbitrage trade, so the market risk neutral trade. So that has been proved to be the most successful strategy in the TradFi space for the past 50 years. I am excited to see such type of trading strategies coming up in crypto space as well in the next couple of years.
Exciting, and yes, we will be talking a little bit more further on what we can actually borrow from TradFi in terms of overall risk management. And an interesting thing about Chris, by the way, before he started up the Single Class, which is a trading infrastructure provider for the crypto options, he spent almost a decade in Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. But before he became the investment banker, he had faced a big choice and difficult choice whether he will continue his professional career as a gamer in a Dota or become an investment banker. But I think it's maybe Tiger Mom insisted on the investment banker career.
Yeah, right now the career is a combination of both.
All right, I would like to switch to Lawrence Chu, chairman of VSFG. And VSFG is the first SFC-regulated digital asset manager in Hong Kong since 2020, managing over 5 million in assets, 5 billion, sorry, in assets. Lawrence, to the point of Chris about the risk management and what we can learn from the TradFi and we can bring this into the space, how we can improve the centralized finance overall ecosystem.
Well, first and foremost, I want to welcome everyone to Hong Kong. It's great to see so many people here and participate in this. I think a lot of the work that we do is about participation and making sure people can come into the market, feel safe, and survive, right? And not be exposed and taken advantage of. So one of the things that we've been working very closely with the government on policies is really not reinventing the wheel. I mean, I'm supportive of DeFi, supportive of CeFi. Whatever innovation comes, it comes. But I think one of the big things we want to bring to the ecosystem and also in Hong Kong is more people to participate. And really, when we talk to regulators, a lot of things are like, maybe there are things you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. There are certain things that are in play from traditional finance that's been around for 50 years, 100 years. Trading strategies, compliance, very basic stuff. I'm going to say something that may not bode well with some of our exchange partners, but especially in the crypto exchange space, I feel there's a lot of innovation that is really more for self-profit than to grow the industry. So I think with what's happened in the last year and really the industry maturing over the last few cycles, that we see more of a convergence. And there are some things that are great for DeFi and that will work, but I feel for adoption, for institutional kind of capital to come in, bear in mind, crypto is great. We're a $1 trillion industry, but you know how big the traditional asset industry is? Like everybody's wealth is tied into $500 trillion or more, right? How do we move 10% of that into innovative finance for the next generation? It has to be kind of baby steps that people understand. It has to be technology and processes that people understand in order to get to the next step. So I feel like a lot of things that are happening in Hong Kong give regulators, participants in the industry a bit of patience, but it's a stepping stone, right? We all want to get to a bigger stage eventually. It'll take some time, but I think as the dialogue is very open here, and I must commend really all the market participants as well as really regulators. I mean, no one ever says that, right? I mean, we're like, regulators, really? But they've actually been quite proactive to understand what's happening and to develop policies that eventually kind of will get there for us. And hopefully everyone can be on this bandwagon and help that progress.
And thanks, Lawrence. Kind of observing the space is basically we have a crypto becoming aware, the crypto world becoming aware of necessity of being regulated, because ultimately we're talking about the trust. And if you want to increase adoption to what you've been saying, we need to make people trust. And the trust is guaranteed by the regulator, because the regulators put the stamp of the trust towards this or another company, and that's why we're talking about the license. And at the same time, banks are becoming more aware of demand coming from the crypto side. So I think we will meet somewhere in the middle in the future. Yeah, but before that, I think they will be going through a lot of learnings and adjustment and adapting to each other and learning, understanding. I think these conversations are very important, and these events like this is very important to facilitate this co-education of different parties. I'd like to ask a question of Theon. You've had experience of running a regulated exchange in Japan, one of the first one, SBI VC. And one thing is great about regulation is, of course, you have this transparency, clear set of rules, but then to which point it will become the regulation becoming a suffocation? Because in the end of the world, in the crypto world, we are, the idea of going into something new, into unknown, building something that never existed, is associated with a lot of risk. So how we can maintain this pace of innovation while being also regulated and work in line with the law?
I think it's a very, very fine balance that you have to walk, right? So for instance, in the case of Japan, like you mentioned, I was running the exchange, it's called SBI VC Trade. It's a regulated exchange, number 5. And the thing is, when I started, when the exchange started in 2018-19, there was like three cryptos. Fast forward 5 years later, now we have like, 14 tokens that are traded in the exchange. Okay, there's an increase there. But if you look like the unregulated exchanges, like say Binance, KuCoin, OKX, etc., you have between 200, 400 tokens that are traded there. Some even go to as high as 700 to 800 tokens. So for users, right, what do we look for? We want to look for places where we can deploy our capital, we can play. You want to have different tables, different, have blackjack, you have crap table, you've got this and that, right? You don't want to just be playing poker all the time. Poker is fun, but you want different avenues to bet. So back to like regulated exchanges. So I think it's a very fine line. You have to see, okay, so initially maybe you start, when you start to regulate a few tokens, Bitcoin, Ethereum, but the regulators has to be up to date with the market. And then as time evolves, you will need to be able to give that flexibility to regulated exchanges to add different products and to be more innovative. For instance, let's say, in Hong Kong, we have one exchange which has, a license a couple of years ago. And it's a good exchange, but given that it has to work within certain guardrails and the situation is so difficult, it's much more difficult to innovate. I think Hong Kong just granted another license to, I think, Hashkey a few months ago, right? So I think going forward, what Hong Kong has to do is to give more leeway, give more and have more dialogue with the players to see how they can move faster. Because the thing is, the private sector always move much faster than what the government or the regulators can keep up with. So I think it's a fine balance. Continue to keep up the dialogue and be proactive, like what Hong Kong is currently doing.
It's good point. So being regulated, but provide a room for space for innovation in that sense. And I would like to turn to Linux. Obviously, OKX done a big job convincing regulators in going to the same path. How do you balance between these two? Being open to innovate, to change, to challenge the existing system, but also being complied with and adapt with by the rules of regulators?
Yeah, I think that is basically how you need to structure your company and structure your resources. So on OKX internally, we spend a lot of efforts into what we call a compliance product. The compliance product is basically building a scalable solution, a scalable middleware that's with the capability to fulfill or flexible enough to fulfill the common regulatory requirement in global scale or multiple licensing requirement. That's something that our central exchange business, we're going to behave like that. But at the same time, we want to commit on the technology innovation as well. So we split our team. Around 1/3 of our team actually investing the very basic infrastructure, and we want to tackle a very basic technological challenge in Web3 blockchain. So I think the vision of OKX is relatively simple. We would become the gatekeeper, speaking a similar language with the regulators, but doesn't have to jeopardize our innovations on Web3 and blockchain. And by doing that, we're starting to understand that, hey, there's missing components on the Web3, on the blockchain, so we need to take on that. And also, hey, there's some experience, especially for example, risk management, that we can learn from our historical data that we learned so far in CX, in Central Exchange business model, that we can potentially transform to a decentralized environment. For example, internally, we're thinking about whether or not it's feasible to build a portfolio margin system on chain. It's really a technological challenge, but we're willing to take on that based on the experience in C5.
And it makes me remember back in last November when we were hosting the Hong Kong FinTech Week, and I was on the stage, behind the stage, talking to SBF. I think we were chatting about going to Bahamas before he went on stage, where he was boasting about that they're the most regulated exchange in the world. They have hundreds of regulators they're working with, and what happened afterwards. And a opponent of the ideas of centralized, exchanges, though advocates for decentralized finance, basically saying, do not become like bank. We don't want exchanges become another bank. That's the whole point of building this decentralized finances. We're losing that. And moreover, these entities, they would be losing to the banks because it's a banking territory. They're much stronger here. And then that's the biggest advantage of the decentralized finance is kind of eliminated. Anyone wants to have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so actually, again, I love DeFi, I love CeFi as well. I'm much more patient because if we look back how our bank system ended up here, the first bank entrepreneur ended up in jail because it's unregulated. It's more like a pansy. And think about how and where we are for the CeFi exchanges. I think we are already very fast. And the fact is, if we look back the history of regulation, a lot of regulations only came after something happened, like things like last year. The most important thing I feel is like how committed we are. As long as we are committed to do things properly, to be regulated, and again, we are already quite fast. I mean, even now, let's say in derivative space, I think we are more like around 2000, the year 2000. But then I still think over the past 5 years, we are fast enough. We should be a little bit more patient. And again, the key is like everyone, like including our partners, we are very committed to do these things properly. I mean, of course, DeFi will be here, CeFi will be here. I mean, I think two sides can be friendly, like coexist together. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I think just adding on to this topic, right? This comes to like the overall theme of CeFi versus DeFi, what's happening in CeFi versus what's happening in DeFi. And I think one thing that's really important to try to think through is like there's really two angles that you need to think through. One is like benefits of CeFi versus DeFi and the risks of CeFi versus DeFi, right? And I think a lot of people in this room who have used like centralized crypto products, right? The benefits are quite clear as of right now over DeFi, right? It's really speed of execution and product access, right? You know, if you use products from OKX or other guys, you know, you'll see that there's a lot of products available, right? These are the benefits. You know, however, when you look at risks, right? And I think before, like pre-FTX, like if you look at this industry, it's almost like the pre-FTX era and the post-FTX era, right? Like when we were talking about this panel, I think a few days ago, right? This one word came up, risk management, right? And more specifically, it's more counterparty risk management, right? So when no matter if you're using, you know, a centralized crypto exchange or a centralized crypto custodian or a centralized crypto staking provider, you know, or even a bank, right? Like look what happened with Silicon Valley Bank or Silvergate, these guys, like it's really important to try to understand like what are the risk management practices that differentiate safe venues versus unsafe venues, right? And I'm not sure, did anyone in this room read there's like the 43-page FTX failures report that was just out a few days ago? Any hands? Okay, there's a hand in the back, a hand up there, right? I think it's like when you look at that report, right? It's very clear. There's one specific element that's lacking, right? Is this idea of internal controls, right? What are the controls? What are the risk management controls that centralized entity is doing to prevent loss? And you know that's, you know, if you look at the benefits of getting a license, right? For Hashkey, right? Hashkey is the operator, the second operator in Hong Kong of a licensed exchange. It's not just getting a license and then just throwing it up and saying, hey, we have a license and using that for brand value. It's like if you look at the details of what a license offers to users, it's very specific, right? Legal segregation of client assets from company assets, which is huge in the context of FTX. There's also very important restrictions on conflicts of interest. You know, a company like Hashkey that's operating its own exchange can't have its own internal market maker that's market making on exchanges. I'm not sure if anyone else in here is following kind of, you know, the other exchanges that have been launched recently. You know, there's the Open Exchange that's, you know, trying to trade bankruptcy claims. Even them, you know, a lot of people, you know, when they're looking to the future, they're realizing some of the risks that were present on exchanges before that need to be addressed, right? So like for ourselves, no internal market making, legal segregation of client assets, which means that we can't use your assets, you know, to do whatever we want with. And then also, you know, you see other exchanges that have been launched recently who are all not, you know, who are not, have those internal market making functions, right? So when you compare that to DeFi, so just going back to DeFi for a quick moment, right? I think if the technology is applied appropriately, like the benefits of DeFi are, you know, to reduce counterparty risk, right? Because in some of these platforms, when you're transferring your assets into them, it's very clear and transparent where your assets are at all time, right? And there's no like centralized entity that's necessarily holding that. With DeFi and smart contracts, there are other things that you do need to take into consideration, right? There is some risks, right, in the smart contract. Who's holding the keys? What are the custodial arrangements around the keys? How are those being managed? So there's a lot of very like detailed and nuanced things that you need to go in through. So I think there will always be a room for, you know, investors and users that prefer to use centralized exchanges for the benefits, but they'll use the ones that are mitigating some of the risks. And there'll be other users who want to use DeFi, but who will be able to use it in a smart way by understanding, you know, how those risks are mitigated in different protocols.
And Lawrence, yes, you were introduced to the concept of decentralized finance back in the days. You were like one of these OGs. In 2014, I think Lawrence mentioned that he bought his first Bitcoin, or the second Bitcoin, from Arthur Hees, the BitMEX founder, when he was browsing through his business plan in a cafe in Shenzhen here in Hong Kong. At that time, everyone was inspired about the concept of decentralization. Where we are now in this point, and what's your views on this?
I was going to continue to talk about CeFi since we were so happy talking about it. I just want to make one more point about CeFi exchanges. I also think we have to jump out of the framework of every exchange is the same and what it means to set up exchanges going into the future, right? I think we learn from every wave. I mean, I've been in this long enough to have been through a few waves, Mt. Gox, a couple of, Gatecoin, FTX, of course. And you learn from it, right? And I think regulators are trying to learn from that so that they can give guidelines. And I also think that there will be different exchanges popping up that do slightly different things. Not to say that we don't want to do crypto here, but actually a lot of the stuff that's also being pushed here, and I would say going forward, is what the previous panel was talking about, which is around real-world asset tokenization, right? Because I think a lot of that protection is around what if you're dealing with $500 trillion? It's not going to be so just brushed under the table, right? So I think a lot of the regulators are more trying to figure out how to pace themselves around that as assets get bigger. And obviously the next generation are much more digital, right? Much more digital native. I mean, regarding DeFi side, I would say similarly, there are things that are probably more catered to being traded on a DeFi exchange.
All right, we have only a few minutes left. I know that there are a lot of people coming from outside of Hong Kong here at this event, and it's great to see all of you, and we welcome you in Hong Kong. Given all of your experience in this space, in the city, what one piece of advice you would give to someone exploring opportunities now in Hong Kong within Web3? Make it in 30 seconds. Maybe Lennox, start from you.
Oh, yeah. I think it's the unique opportunities Hong Kong would be. Hong Kong happen to be one of the major financial centers that's actually grant actual exchange license. That's very unique. Then also licensing regime compared to other jurisdictions.
Okay. I'm going to make it very short. So it's actually a very good combination of who I want to be here in Hong Kong. You can be a gamer because you can just stay at home, play games, and then life is so convenient. And then you can be a banker, that's the financial service center in the world. And also right now, after this Web3 reform, you can also be an entrepreneur in Web3. So that's like the perfect combination for me. So.
Yeah, I think what's great about Hong Kong is it's actually, right now, it's actually a very good place to innovate with a framework that's very clear, right? And I'll just give you a specific example, like why Hong Kong is a really great place to innovate, for companies like ourselves that want to do things in a safe way for users, right? Like it was just announced, actually HashKey just announced today, is the first time we've ever announced this. We just launched a new product to market called HSK, which is it's an ecosystem point, which uses ERC20. So it's an ERC20 based ecosystem point that'll be used throughout all of HashKey's products, including its exchange. Users can earn it by trading on the exchange, and then users can use it to offset trading fees, similar to other products that you see in the market. And we're able to do that in Hong Kong as a licensed exchange, right? And it's very clear, all this information, data has been communicated with the regulator here in Hong Kong. So I think that's a great example, like HashKey being able to, issue this ecosystem point, which is called HSK, issuing it on the Ethereum blockchain. As of today, right, you can go to the website, www.hashkey.com and check out the white paper. And being able to do that in a place like Hong Kong as a regulated entity, I think to me is just good proof that this is a great place to innovate with a very clear regulatory framework.
Thank you. Lawrence?
We have nice beaches here. Nice beaches and good food. No, just kidding. I think it's a more traditional answer, but it is really the bridge between East and West, right? Very easy for talent from China to come in, connected globally from a financial center point of view. We have sort of open capital. There's no capital control, so money flows in and out, which is why it is an international finance center. It is a capital base. So I think that's where people can create innovation and ideas. And I think with regards to Web3 and the direction there, it's really a hub for IP. So as we see, beyond just tokenization as a generalization, as we see Web3 creativity being tokenized, cash flows of IP being tokenized, and really the whole remit of the creator economy, this is where it's going to be because it's kind of a solid base to start from.
I have worked in a few major financial hubs in the world, including Tokyo for a long time, London, New York, and Hong Kong. I skipped Singapore. So I think the beauty of Hong Kong is that it has the flexibility, and the people here, they have this can-do attitude. So in Hong Kong, if you know how to bend, they know how to bend rules in a proper way and get things done, right? In some other major cities in the world, you may have some money or a lot of money, but things still don't get done properly. So in regards to Web3, I think this attitude, and with the influx of money coming from all over the world. I was in a drinks with OKX yesterday, hosted by Lennox. So I've met people from at least 10 countries. So Hong Kong is opening up. It's flexible, and there's a lot of money here.
Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you, gentlemen. A big round of applause to all speakers here for an insightful and great discussion. Thank you very much. A gentle reminder for all of you, simultaneous interpretation will be provided. You can scan the QR code on your brochure and listen to simultaneous interpretation through your mobile phone. 这里提大家，活动会提供传译服务，你们可以扫描会看手册的二维码，然后通过手机收听。So moving on, we'll have another roundtable discussion. And without further ado, may I now invite Clara Chiu, CEO of QREC Advisory, to be the moderator of the coming panel discussion with the topic of future of digital currencies. Also, I would like to invite the following speakers on stage. They are Joao Reginato, VP of Product Circle; Connie Zheng, Chief Product Officer, Audi Technologies; Tina Shakaran, Business Development, Coin Systems, Onyx JP Morgan. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a round of applause to our speakers. I will now pass the floor to Clara. Over to you, Clara.
Wow, good to see so many people here today. Welcome everyone. And we have a small panel here, but I believe that it will be a very interesting discussion. Anyway, let me briefly introduce our speaker today. We have Joao Reginato. He is the VP of Product of Circle. And as all of you know that USDC, the stablecoin of Circle, is one of the biggest stablecoin in the world. And Joao leads the product development and also led the build out of it. And then we have our speaker, Connie Zheng here. Connie is the Chief Product Officer of Audi Technology. And Audi Technology is a Hong Kong-based, very innovative fintech company. And they provide cross-border payment services. For Connie, she has previously held senior position in PwC and IBM. She also has been regarded as a business transformer in the development of new commercial models and products for Fortune 500 companies. And lastly, we have Tina Shakaran. and she is the Business Development Con System owned by JP Morgan. For that, we will further discuss the JP Con later on. And for me, as some of you know that I was previously the FinTech head of SFC, and I was also the licensing director. Now I have my own advisory firm, QRED. Without further ado, maybe we start this panel discussion. For us to start, before we talk about today's topic, future of digital currency, maybe we talk a bit about the past. For the first question, it will be to Joao. For the USDC stablecoin, I understand that you started to build that in 2016. Could you share with us the journey you went through, and then, what the interesting and difficult issues, and how you overcame all those?
Sure, yeah, happy to. Yeah, so first of all, I think it's important to highlight that I think the way that different companies have been arriving to the concept of stablecoins and stablecoin products, I think it varies a lot. I like to tell the story of how Circle has gotten to that concept eventually, because Circle did not start like that. So Circle was founded in 2013. Jeremy Allaire, he's a serial entrepreneur. He has had multiple businesses in the internet space that he has brought public, and he found out about Bitcoin as a lot of us eventually, circa 2013, and he thought it was this amazing innovation that was going to allow for the benefits that we have seen the internet bringing for communications, for media, over to finance, right? So he founded Circle in 2013 with this idea that let's try to bring the benefits of this technology over to consumers around the world. I joined Circle in 2015, and at the time, what we were working on then was consumer products. So we had a product. It was called Circle Pay, and it was essentially a peer-to-peer transfer product that worked across borders. So we operated a product out of the U.S. and out of Europe. And it supported 3 currencies, dollars and euros and pounds. And so I could send dollars from the United States, for example, and it would arrive on a friend of mine that would have the product in Europe as euros, for example. The way that we operated the product was very interesting behind the scenes. So we actually utilized the Bitcoin blockchain as a settlement layer at the time. So we would literally sell dollars for Bitcoin, settle that transaction across, the company, the different legal entities that we utilize in the different regions for the company, and then we would sell the Bitcoin on the other side to buy euros or pounds. As you can imagine, it wasn't very efficient. It was prone to exposure to Bitcoin volatility. It also didn't scale very well, and so circa 2015, 16. There was a lot of, as you can remember, for some of you who have been in the industry for a little longer, that there was a lot of debate around scaling and Bitcoin. Eventually, that led to to the initial forks of Bitcoin. But we realized internally that was not going to be a good foundation for the types of products that we wanted to build. And so I was fortunate and lucky enough to be sort of separated out for a while with a group of engineers to research what could be the next platform or tech stack that we could use for a settlement, obviously utilizing blockchain technology. At the time, Ethereum was beginning to emerge. There was a lot of, with the ICO boom, obviously we were attracted to Ethereum. Maybe we wanted to build our own settlement token. We actually investigated that quite a lot. But very quickly, I think in researching the space, what we realized is that we wanted fiat currencies to be brought on-chain, right? And so we looked at, obviously, Tether was reasonably successful already at the time. And we thought, okay, but if we are to build something that is going to use by hundreds of thousands of developers eventually to rebuild sort of the financial system on top of this technology, we felt that we needed to build something that was going to have a super high bar for transparency, to be a very trusted piece of infrastructure and neutral piece of infrastructure for the world. And that's how we landed on the idea of let's build our own stablecoin, let's build USDC. Since then, I think we have been on this journey. I think the way that we look into USDC is an extremely, extremely powerful product. I think we are just in the beginning of what it can deliver, but the way that we look into it is that we can, with USDC, we can bring a dollar account for everyone in the world in a very open way. And we have this, as I said, we have this developer mindset because we separated a team to go and research what would be the next settlement platform for the company. And actually, I had as a plan that I was going to go away, build USDC, and go back to working on consumer products to hopefully rebuild them on top of this infrastructure. And I never got the chance to do that because USDC was so successful so quickly. But the other vision that we have is that USDC can be this open dollar platform for every developer in the world, right? There's so much potential in having a dollar-based infrastructure that is open, that is permissionless, that runs on blockchains, that is global in nature, and allows for developers to innovate and build financial applications on top of that. I think we were very fortunate with time, with what happened with in decentralized finance, particularly on Ethereum, and how when that started to grow and gain adoption in 2019, USDC was seen like a perfect match, and so we're super proud of the traction and the usage that we have from a developer point of view when it comes to DeFi. Developers really trust and leverage the power of USDC. But then right after that, we started actually building it even more and additional tools for developers. So Circle has had APIs to support the tokenization and redemption of digital dollars since around about 2019. It was a very fast follow that we have had once we launched USDC. And as I said, we are always working with the developer community and trying to bring them more feature sets and more capabilities. One thing that is very important that we have been working on in the recent past is something that we call the cross-chain transfer protocol. It's sort of a bridging protocol that Circle has built, and it will be live. It is live on testnet, and it will be live on mainnet very soon, in a matter of weeks. And it basically allows for the native transport of USDC across all the blockchains where it is supported. Because USDC, it's a real-world asset brought to blockchains, right? It's the dollar brought to blockchains. So you know, because the collateral for the crypto assets, it's off-chain, we can actually destroy the asset on the source and recreate it on destination when developers want to move it across chains, to provide developers with the flexibility to build multi-chain applications, you know, or applications that leverage the benefit of multiple blockchains in a transparent way to users. So I always like to tell this story to get people to understand that we have a very developer-focused mentality. We arrived at the idea of stablecoins as a new fabric for building financial services and applications. And I think USDC is only the start. Obviously, the world needs the digitization of all other fiat currencies around the world, and we're always happy to work with developer teams to achieve that.
Very good. For the question, maybe I go to Connie first about Audi technology. I understand that your company has an Audi wallet. So maybe you talk more about, you know, that wallet, the functions of it, so that the audience would have a better idea, you know, what are the innovative features in it. And I also understand that there is a very interesting features in the wallet is something called accounting unit, 元币, round dollar. For that, is it a cryptocurrency or a virtual asset, or what is it? Maybe you also share with all of us and tell us more about that.
Thank you for your questions. I think I also got this question a lot, so that is also like something, an innovation that's coming from our company. So first, Audi Technology is a Hong Kong-based fintech company. So we are serving the Hong Kongs and also more focusing on the Asia-Pacific enterprise user. So just mentioned they have Audi, the round dollars in our wallet. So first, we are actually solving problems for the cross-border payments, especially in the enterprise world. So as you could know that in the enterprise cross-border payments, it will not only involve one currency, it always involve different currency because of the trading activities. So our $1 consists of 3 different currencies: Hong Kong dollars, RMB, and Japan yen. There's an interesting story behind it. This 3 currency we actually fix it as a specific rate. So we actually got the recommendations or advice from the economists that's looking at the Asia-Pacific, the trading history. And then in order to come up with compositions to build this special unit that's for our enterprise user to use in the trading environment. And then that's also what we believe that would be more like commonly accepted or commonly adopted compositions for the Asia-Pacific trading scenario. And as I mentioned, in the trading, the cross-border payments, especially for the smaller company with limited resources in the financial system, they always face the problems about to managing their currency risk. For example, when they will need to do the cross-border trading, then our round dollars unit could actually give them an alternative to manage this currency risk. And that will definitely what we believe that will help them to manage, to give them the better margins of their business. And to answer another question, talking about like how we see this as in digital currency or stable coins, we believe that the stable coin or digital currency is a very important part in the enterprise transactions, especially cross-border transactions. But at the same time, we believe that small media company will need more educations and trust in the system before they're getting into the stable coins. What we want to achieve is having this round dollars units in our wallet that give them a very user-friendly interface that they can easily convert their fiat currency and into this currency unit, and that will give them real-time and low-cost cross-border transactions. But at the same time, our technology is actually a licensed our SVF company that's under HKMA. We are very excited to see the latest the movements from the Hong Kong government and regulations in the stablecoins that we will definitely see there's some positive movement that we can take advantage to advance the $1 activities. So as I mentioned, that the round dollar, well, we believe that for the round dollars units, that would help the more focusing on the enterprise user for the smaller companies that give them more. Give them the trust and also educations to handle this cross-border payments in an easy way, and also like they can enjoy the efficiency and also at a lower cost. So this is like how we actually want to help like the small companies in the Hong Kong base.
Thank you. So for Tina, my question is, I understand that you're a very experienced banker, and now you have been a banker, right, with different banks, yeah. And then now you're working with JP Morgan, and you are now working on the project of JP Morgan's Owner's Coin system and JPM Coin. So maybe can you tell us more about these products, and then what are the solutions for these products bring to the banking industry? And also, do you see any limitation for the further development of these products?
Great. Thanks for the question, Clara. And thank you, organizers, for giving traditional finance a seat on the table. We usually don't make an appearance in such events, so thank you. Within Tier 1 banks, JP Morgan probably has among the largest blockchain teams. We have like 200 plus people in Onyx itself. And we've been working on blockchain solutions since 2015, which, to put things in perspective, was when Ethereum was born. So we've been very early to the game. We are not fully sold on cryptocurrencies. We can't say we believe in them necessarily because we are still waiting for the utility to become apparent. But we do believe that blockchain technology can be used to transform traditional finance. One of our key foundational products, as Clara, you mentioned, is JPM Coin. JPM Coin is not a stable coin. It is a bank account that sits on blockchain. Traditional bank accounts have a lot of inefficiencies built into it because you can't use them on weekends. You can't use them after market close. They're not programmable. But JPM coin accounts which sit on blockchain, you can use these on weekends, after hours, etc., which is not necessarily a problem in retail, but in the wholesale cross-border business, that's a huge problem. So if you need to transfer $500 million from New York to Singapore on a weekend, if you want to transfer $1 billion from Hong Kong to Luxembourg after Hong Kong markets have closed, but before Luxembourg markets close, it's not something that you can do using traditional rails. You can do that using JPM coin systems. So that's the product that we are working on. There's lots of cool things added on to it. I feel like we don't have enough time to get into all of those products. But you did ask what are the hurdles that we face. And I think the biggest hurdle is regulation. And I know there's this narrative in the crypto space that regulators are trying to slow down crypto and they're waiting so that TradFi can catch up. And I find that, that narrative quite hilarious. No one understands the frustration of dealing with regulators more than TradFi because we are subjected to the most intense scrutiny you can't even imagine. And we had our CEO, Jamie Dimon, talk very recently in a letter to shareholders where he talks about how relationships with regulators can be quite intense. And even if you disagree, you have to comply. And we understand where regulators come from. I mean, a regulator's job is quite thankless. They get criticized every time something goes wrong. They are not applauded for all the problems that they avert. But despite that, we live in a world where we have pioneered so many products. We've pioneered products like deposit tokens, which we are waiting for regulatory clarity before we can bring them to market. So regulation, I think, is the hurdle.
Yeah, definitely. I also think regulatory clarity is very, very important. As from time to time I've spoken about these on different occasions. I think people really want to do their business in a compliant way. But sometimes if regulators are only mentioning about, these are the rules, and then we are only principle-based, and then clarity is not that certain there, then people, from time to time may accidentally step into some places that regulators think, you should not cross the border. So providing a regulatory clarity is very important to the growth, healthy growth of the whole industry. Yeah. And for other things, as now we are talking about regulators or regulatory actions, and as all you know that recently there are a lot of regulatory cases or enforcement cases ongoing internationally. So Joel, do you think all these action of regulators will start the development of virtual assets or digital currency in the future?
No, I don't think so. The way that I think we think about it is in three ways, right? So three reasons why I don't think the current regulatory environment that we are in, which is very mixed from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and as you pointed out, in the U.S. it can be quite confusing at the moment. The three reasons why I think that still will not mean, far from the end of the future of digital currencies and this kind of technology. First of all, because I think, we humans, we are not very good with timelines, right? I think we have this frequency and recency biases that, what tends to be happening now seems like it's going to be what's going to happen forever. But if you zoom out, actually, and Tina was talking about this, I think regulators have a really, really tough job in their hands, particularly with this kind of technology, because I think, first of all, the private sector is always running ahead of regulators, right? It's always experimenting and innovating in financial services, and when it creates something that hasn't been properly covered by prior regulation, regulators have to catch up, and that can potentially easily take years, right? So that's one thing. But I think to compound on that, I think digital currencies are the type of technology that exacerbate that private sector running ahead element of what I said. because they make it so easy to innovate, right? So I think when you look at the last 5 or 10 years in crypto, what has happened is really sort of the reinvention or the re-implementation of a lot of foundational pieces of financial services that previously took decades and decades to be figured out. But blockchain and crypto, because of the composability and the programmability of these financial building blocks now, people are iterating and innovating and recreating how these things work in a matter of months, right? In a matter of a couple of years, as I said, what would have taken decades before. So I think we have compounded a lot of the creation of a lot of instruments and a lot of different types of services around the world. I will not hide, and we as an industry, we should not hide. Then there's a lot of bad things that happened on top of that, right? Last year, the previous panel was talking about FTX, Luna, like all these bad things that happen. When you compound all those things, then if you have this very short-term perspective, it feels like we're in a very bad time, and it's going to be like that forever. But I would like to think that when you zoom out, you realize that what's happening right now, it's a correction to try and make sure that this industry is not fully out in the wild and doing things that it shouldn't be doing. So I think eventually a lot of the clarity around the regulatory regimes in all of these jurisdictions, we are seeing that in many countries. We see Hong Kong advancing. We see the U.S. rediscussing stablecoin legislation. So I still think, if you want to be positive and you want to look at a little bit more of a medium term, these things are going to converge again. The second reason, so that's the first reason, I think, just zoom out a bit and you'll realize that, things should not be as bad as they look. The second reason is when you look at things from a developer point of view. I was walking around here in the conference before, and I always like to do this and, approach developers, approach startups that I haven't heard about before. And every single one of those conversations, when people learn about what I do, what we work with USDC, everybody is interested in that. I talk to blockchains. We have had a huge amount of innovation in the last couple of years in terms of innovation on layer 1s, layer 2s. Every blockchain wants and needs USDC present over there. Every developer, you don't actually need to pitch to them, as Tina said, how the benefits of blockchain technology, how a dollar that runs on the blockchain will allow, financial applications that run on a weekend, right, that don't stop for business hours, that are just more open and allow these financial services to be more interoperable. That is very attractive to developers, and I think we have a huge pull from a developer point of view. That's another reason why I think this is not going away. And the third and probably most important reason is because, particularly for stablecoins and talking about what we do, I think it solves many and very important real-world problems, right? I think it's the closest thing that we have had in crypto to really solving real-world problems. I was in Latin America, Brazil and Argentina in the last 2 weeks. I invite anybody, and here in Asia we see a lot of that, but I invite people to kind of go and research what's happening in emerging markets with volatile currencies, with high inflation. Everybody wants to hold a dollar, right? And some people don't have a bank account where they can hold a dollar, but they have a mobile phone and an internet connection. So it solves a real world problem for those people. We don't think those people should be ignored. We work with the UNHCR, in the support they do for refugees and in the support that they have done with refugees, sending USDC to refugees in the Ukraine. With the help of MoneyGram and blockchains like Stellar. I mean, you can't go much more, in real-world use cases and important use cases to solve like that. I think that pull that comes from the developer interest and vision that people have, and the real-world use cases, the real-world problems that we're solving for people, that convinces me that this technology is not going away. Stablecoins are here to stay, and we have to figure out a way for them to be regulated and properly enabled, but this is not a genie that I think gets put back into a bottle.
Yes, exactly, well said. And in Hong Kong, Hong Kong government is very supportive in developing this crypto area, virtual asset area. And our financial regulators are also very proactive in developing different regulatory regimes. Like for the Hong Kong SFC, we have virtual asset regulations for crypto platform, crypto virtual asset trading platform we call, which is in essence crypto exchanges. And then we also have regulations for crypto fund managers and crypto advisors. And HKMA, as all of you know, that is also now very proactively in considering how to license and supervise stablecoin in Hong Kong. So for all these, Connie, do you think, other than all these regulatory support, or from this perspective, any other things we could do to help to boost the confidence and trust in digital currency?
Yes, I think there's two ways to see the trust in digital currency. One is, of course, is about the general public, how they see this, the adoptions of the digital currency. Regulatory support or guidance would definitely help to build the trust in this area, and especially as our chairman is actually Norman Chan, that's having the past regulatory experience, that we all believe that this is a credential, it is crucial to actually establish that. But second thing is, I think not only the regulatory support, but also the education I have mentioned earlier is to the, no matter it's the individuals or even the enterprise, they would like to know more about the digital currency, what is the benefit and also the risk using this channel, and also how could they comply when they use this as a transaction. I think this is like more on the general adoptions of the digital currency. At the other side, it's also about when you're using it during transactions, how do you build trust in these transactions? That is also another way that we need to see it. I think currently there's a regulatory also, or in the financial institutions, there's also conducts many different kinds of KYC or AML in order to build the trust when they're doing this cross-border or this kind of transactions in that. What we believe that would be something more efficient or something further we could do by actually granting everyone their own digital identities with a well-recognized or well-accepted AML verifications. So each companies themselves, they can get their own digital currency, digital identity, do not need to go through every single of institutions or the processors. Then they can be easily adopted into a different system. At the same time, when they're doing this digital currency transactions, they can easily trust the counterparties that they will deal with to avoid the fraud process and the fraud potentials out of it. And that is also something our company is also doing. The digital identities, which is more decentralized way that lets everyone, every user, every enterprise user, they can own and manage it, and then within the ecosystem partner, they can accept it without further KYC or AML process. I think this could also another part that to building the trust to increase the adoptions in the digital currency and stablecoins.
Thank you. And Tina, for the digital asset ecosystem, we usually need a medium of exchange to facilitate the transactions. And the most popular candidates will be like cryptocurrency, stablecoins, CBDCs, and deposit tokens, and all these. What do you think the potential for these assets in 2023 or beyond?
Sure. So I think there's going to be a role for all four. I already mentioned we are not fully sold on cryptocurrencies. So till we see the utility of cryptocurrencies, I'd say cryptocurrencies will be dependent on the human instinct of FOMO to sustain demand. So I'll keep cryptocurrencies aside for now. Stable coins are more interesting. They're a lot more complicated as well. We don't talk about this enough, but when JPM coin was initially conceived, it was supposed to be a stable coin. And if I could be a little bit arrogant right now, I think if JP Morgan was to launch a stable coin, I think given our fortress balance sheet, given that we have this very, very strong brand, chances are that we'd become among the leading stablecoin issuers in no time. And issues like, are stablecoins fully backed? Are they backed by good collateral? Are they backed by liquid collateral? Are customer funds segregated? These kind of issues would not really be issues. But having said that, I think that's looking at stablecoins from a very micro lens. We being a GSIB, being a globally, systemically important bank, we have to think of second, third order impacts of new innovations like stablecoins. And then that's when things get quite complicated. Just for example, the role of a bank is to take deposits from you and me and to then lend it out for home loans, for education loans, for small businesses. If you have stablecoins and stablecoins scale to such an extent, then that money is not going for home loans and education loans, it's going into treasuries. Is that necessarily a positive in the global financial scale? I'm not so sure. When you have stablecoins, there's this huge demand for treasuries. Is there sufficient treasuries that exist? Again, I'm not sure. There was a study done by the ECB with regards to Libra, where they said that if Libra scales enough, then sufficient short-term A+ Euro bonds did not exist. And there are many other issues like that. So for example, the most common form of money right now is commercial bank money. And the way it is structured, commercial bank money issued by a JP Morgan by the user is considered the same as US dollars issued by Citibank. And the reason is there's a central bank that intermediates between them. With stablecoins, what we need to now think about is how do we ensure that one USDC is equal to one Tether, even at times of market stress. Now, these are not solvable. There are solutions probably, but these are things that have to be considered and thought through, and we as GSIBs need to think about that. The other innovation that we have pioneered is deposit tokens. What we've done is we've taken Singapore dollar deposits, we've taken assets in Japanese yen, we've tokenized them, we've put them on public blockchain on Polygon, and we are exchanging it using the Aave protocol. So there we are going on public blockchain, we are going into more interoperable systems. So that's a big leap forward, but it has the checks and balances of a bank deposit. So you have liquidity ratios, you have capital ratios in place, and like so many other things in place, which should be giving a lot of confidence in the product itself. The last was CBDCs. We see some value in wholesale CBDCs. I think with retail CBDCs, there's some ethical issues around privacy, etc. But wholesale CBDCs, we see value in. And net, just to conclude, we see CBDCs being the risk-free settlement mechanism between commercial banks. We see deposit tokens taking on the role of bank deposits. And we see stable coins taking on the role of e-money. And I think that is the direction that we are probably going in. Sorry for the long answer.
No, a very good one, very informative. I see it's time for us to finish this panel. Thank you very much for your sharing today. And I hope that all of you enjoyed the panel discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers, for fascinating insights. Thank you. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. So in the previous discussions, we talked about CeFi and DeFi. So which is better, CeFi or DeFi, or can they be integrated? In the following roundtable discussion on product innovation, CeFi versus DeFi, we are very honored to invite the following speakers on stage. So without further ado, may I invite Matt Long, General Manager of Falcon X APAC, Henry Zhang, Founder and CEO of DGFT, Dovei Wang, Founding Partner of Primitive Ventures, Moses Lee, Executive Director of Anchorage Asia, Damien Ho, Team Member of Binance Global Partnerships. They will share and discuss both on the innovative potential and future development prospects. And Matt will be the moderator of this roundtable discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a round of applause to the following speakers. So moving on, I'll pass the floor to Matt. Over to you, Matt.
Great, thanks very much. So look, thanks everyone for joining. This panel's delighted to be here to explore the DeFi versus CeFi debate. Just quickly, my name's Matt Long. I'm the head of APAC at FalconX. We're the world's largest prime broker in the digital asset space, providing access into digital asset markets for institutions. So really delighted to be here to moderate this panel. I think the last 3 to 6 months have provided us with a really good opportunity to get into a very healthy debate and possibly even some heated debate around the DeFi versus CeFi argument. And so what we want to talk about is CeFi, DeFi, product innovation, where we see the future, how do they operate together. So what we'll do first is just pass to each of the panelists and ask them to give a short introduction of themselves and their companies, and then we'll rip into the debate about DeFi versus CeFi.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon. I'm Henry Zhang. I'm the founder and the CEO of DGFT. DGFT is a DEX for security tokens. But make us very unique is we are regulated DEX for security tokens. We are in the regulatory sandbox of Monetary Authority of Singapore. We are the first and the only one so far be licensed to be a DEX for security tokens.
Thanks, Henry. Davi.
Hey guys, so my name is DAY1, and fortunately and unfortunately, so I think I'm the only DeFi person on the panel here, and so I have to try really hard to take all the hit. And yeah, so for Primitive Ventures, and we are a crypto native firm licensed at 2018. And I myself has been pretty active like angel investors in all these protocols and native like crypto stuff like since 2014. And we have been supporting DeFi before DeFi is a thing, say for instance, Kyber, 0x, and then those are our investment like since in like 2017. Has been investing all these native protocols and layer 2 like Optimism, Starware. We are all like early investors, and we have been full-hearted support like anonymous developer on chain, like help GMX, Pika, Luxrare, like Synapse, and like those are all our portfolios and our like fellow founders. And I'm super bullish on the future of like DeFi and gonna be a full proponent on like this sector, and yeah, happy to chat with my CeFi friends here, and like love to have a healthy debate.
Fantastic, Moses.
Hello everyone, I'm Moses, and I represent Anchorage Digital in Asia. Anchorage Digital is purpose-built for institutions to participate in digital assets. We are a regulated crypto platform with qualified custody, settlements, trading, and on-chain services such as staking and governance. We also provide our clients with the infrastructure to build their own digital asset products. And yes, though we are regulated, we both are proponents of CeFi and DeFi.
Damien.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damien. I'm from the global partnership team of Binance. So as many of you know, that Binance has always been one of the largest crypto exchange. But over the past year, we have also turned into a Web3 ecosystem. So my job at Binance is to work with various BU and also external partners to push the adoption of our ecosystem solution, as well as the adoption of overall crypto and Web3 solution. Personally, I'm very happy to be back to Hong Kong and look forward to the discussion shortly.
Terrific. All right, thanks for the introduction. So shall we rip into it?
Yep, let's rip.
Okay, what's the future? DeFi, CeFi, Davi.
Yeah, it has to be like DeFi, right? And like if we look at the past 12 months, all the fiascos are all like CeFi problem. Right, all the mess that has been created, like no matter from crypto native, all these shit shows, or the current banking crisis, it's all CeFi problem. Because at the macro level, and I think the problem is like the current fiat system and all the government has to like probably except for China and like Russia, and all the government and all the regulators, and they all outsource the design to US. And then this has become a bug, like not a feature. So there's no competition. So like everybody like looking at like what like US gonna do and basically outsource like all their like stuff there. And then so like there's like a major like complacency in the system, right? And I think at the micro level, and consumer has no options because all the financial services has been largely consolidated like to all the big banks and like all the big payment players. And we basically sign all this like disclaimer like without reading them and let all these like financial services to gaslight them for whatever they want, right? And so lacking of competition is the biggest problem. So I don't want to say I'm like a DeFi or CeFi maximalist or like minimalist, and so I'm pro competition, so I'm pro open market, so I pro like permissionless, right? So like that's how like we basically need like a healthy evolutionary like mechanism for the market to select the best players. So like that's why I think from that perspective, like DeFi is the future because like there's no like buyer of the last resort, like there's no fat, right? And then so it's like completely just like open competition in like DeFi, and because like whenever there's like a CeFi crisis, we are all saying, oh, don't blame the people, blame the system. But this is like complete just like self-paralysis, right? So it's meaningless because all the CeFi system are designed by a few men like behind the door. It's like just like black box. So like if we blame the system and then we cannot do any change because like we cannot change the system. But when it comes to DeFi, there's no buyer of last resort. And then so if you fail, just like Luna, right? So you basically fell to the ground. And so it's like an open competition. Like if we are not happy with the system or like the system has a flaw and then it will fail. And then we basically just redesign. And DeFi is the only native realm that any quick change can be like implemented. And then even by anonymous developers, right? So like that's why I think like DeFi by nature with the permissionlessness, the openness, gonna be the future.
Damien, do you want to jump in some opening comments?
Yeah, sure. First of all, personally, I like DeFi, and I think DeFi is great. And but I think it's quite nature that CeFi is getting more attention from the regulator and public. I think that's true, also true for any like a fast-growing technology and also financial services. We are seeing that in DeFi. We're also seeing that happening for, say, generative AI and also to DeFi most recently. So I think the key question here is not really about DeFi versus CeFi. At Binance, we are also pro-option. And as the overall crypto adoption of the worldwide population is still very low, it's still less than 5%. We do think that there is a lot of opportunity to further the adoption for CeFi and DeFi together. And as to CeFi, I think for most mass adoption of new technology, there are several key factors. First, you need to have scalability. Secondly, you probably need to have like a better user interface and user experience. Thirdly, you probably need to have like more use case. And Binance, working very hard to, fulfill the needs across these three different factors. I'll give you a couple examples. For example, in terms of investment, Binance venture capital arm, Binance Lab have invested in more than 200 projects over the past years, and a lot of them are actually DeFi projects. And we are not just investing in them, we are also providing our expertise and infrastructure to support this project to grow. Secondly, just earlier this year, we launched a new version of Binance DeFi Wallet because a lot of users, they are hesitant to embrace DeFi because the DeFi wallet traditionally is, it has maybe complicated setup. You need to memorize the seed phrase and maybe clunky user experience. So we launched a DeFi wallet within the Binance app that user can set up his or her wallet within just a few clicks, and they don't need to memorize the seed phrase. Then they can easily transfer the fund from their Binance account to their Binance DeFi wallet and use Wallet Connect to use all kinds of DeFi solutions. So I think what's really important here is for DeFi, CeFi, also maybe SocialFi, GameFi to work together to create like a better, faster, safer solution to attract more crypto adopters.
Terrific, thanks, Damien. So Henry, yours is a really interesting business. Do you want to give some perspective on the DeFi versus CeFi debate from your perspective?
Yeah, indeed. Probably I have some views in between. I think DeFi and CeFi, they are not mutually exclusive to each other. In the past, most financial system is established in a centralized way. So centralized has its own advantages. Now with the invention of blockchain, which is a great innovation, then come to the concept of DeFi, decentralized finance. And the decentralized finance also has its very distinctive advantages. So our view is they not necessarily be mutually exclusive. We should combine the advantages of both to serve a specific purpose. Take DGFT, for example. We are regulated DEX for security tokens, which is linked to the real-world assets, RW assets. For example, one of the conditions of being regulated is we need to do KYC. We need to do KYC. So all the KYC functions are mostly centralized, like it or don't like it. But on the other side, as a decentralized platform, we do not own client assets. So the client owns their own assets in their own wallet, controlled by the private key. And also, since we deploy on the public chain, so most of the data, almost all the data, they are available on public chain. The people have access to it. Even you are not a member, you have access to data. So it's a data transparency, which thanks for the benefit of DeFi or thanks for the technology of a blockchain, the data is much more transparent. So that's the clear advantage of DeFi. So in our view is DeFi and CeFi is not necessarily either 0 or 1. It is something in between. If a solution is like a 0.8 or 0.9, people may think it's more like a DeFi. If a solution is more like a 0.2 or 0.3, it's more like a CeFi. But we are in a very exciting time. I think we have the chance to combine both. But having said that, I would say people may have more interest in DeFi, which we too. Why is that? Because CeFi has been in the market for a century. But the DeFi is something coming to the market maybe less than a decade. So it really brings the distinctive benefit to supplement, to enrich the current offerings.
Terrific. Okay, Moses, finally then to you. So I think out of the panelists, if I'm not wrong, Anchorage has a Fed bank charter, no? So when it comes to CeFi, you guys sort of in the middle of there. Do you want to sort of close out this question around DeFi versus CeFi?
Happy to do so, and maybe we'll talk about trust first. So I think that when we talk about DeFi within the crypto circle, we would often say trustless. Some of the slogans would be don't trust, verify. But take a second to think about it, and you'll realize that trust is common between CeFi and DeFi. And the reason here is that we use trust in a different way. For CeFi, you are trusting a central intermediary to be able to perform the business action. On DeFi, you're not necessarily trusting any central intermediary, but you're actually trusting every participant to be actually verifying and buying into the protocol and the infrastructure around DeFi. So there's trust involved regardless of what you do within CeFi and DeFi, which leads me to talk about infrastructure. So within CeFi, and CeFi crypto in particular, we've had some spectacular blow-ups last year. And you can say that was a major failure in the infrastructure of trust and the infrastructure around perhaps regulation. On DeFi, I can guarantee we've had many blow-ups last year, even this year, and we'll continue to have some issues. So the main thing here is that the infrastructure around CeFi and DeFi needs to improve. So we have different parts of infrastructure that needs to improve within CeFi, and that mainly has to do with regulation. And with DeFi, we have to work on the code and how we interact with it. It's a beautiful technology, and it is very inclusive, but it requires trust throughout.
So I just want to quickly add on that. So I agree that we all trust. Trust is like a social currency, right? So our Homo sapien base, built on top of this trust as a social currency. But what's the key difference in DeFi is for all the blow up? So we have blow up and hacks every day. But the thing is that these are all verifiable blow up, right? So the problem with all these DeFi blow up is that there's no way that the users can verify, of knowing what happened, right? Even the regulator has no idea of what's happening. And Gary Gensler met with SBF right before the blow up, and he has no idea what happened, right? And so I think the accountability and verifiability is very, very important. That gets that basically makes the information symmetry. And so most of this blow up and all this fiasco is all from information asymmetry. So in the CeFi world, and so that's why I think for all the CeFi failure, and it basically leads to a massive adoption of DeFi. It's a free marketing. It's a free marketing and free user onboarding education. So we have seen the on-chain trading volume just skyrocketing, right after FTX blow up, right? And then everything move on to GMX and DYDX, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree there will be a phase that CDFI or something in between, so can be a really good role to onboard users. But I think in the future that CeFi gonna become the ATM machine, basically doing fiat on-ramp, all that, becoming the ATM machine. But once user on the crypto native round, once they're in crypto, say for instance KYC, you can only KYC one layer of the interface. Once they're in ETH, in Bitcoin, and how you can KYC the multiple hops, right? So it's just impossible. The cost is just too high. So I think going forward, CeFi gonna be this really good ATM layer for all the fiat on-ramp. DeFi gonna be this black hole, just keep sucking all the CeFi liquidity, just perpetual, until the major fiat crisis. So that is my idealistic hope for the future of our finance.
Let me jump in a little bit here because I didn't address the part about our banking charter. So people have the misconception that we are just a bank. And the thing that most people don't realize is that Anchorage Digital is crypto native. We are crypto native and the first crypto native bank. And what that means is that while we incorporate the regulatory regime of CeFi, we provide the transparency of crypto and blockchain. So as we talk about CeFi versus DeFi, we're in a very unique position to say that CeFi will continue to adopt the virtues of crypto, and crypto will become more enabling for the masses.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement then, right? That it's some combination of DeFi's DeFi. It's going to be a CDFi. Is that the word that the term we'll use?
I think CDFi gonna be a very good hybrid, and so I think especially for the average users, and then because we have to admit that the current banking rail is still very powerful, adoption, etc., and like going forward, and there can be more like this kind of a mixture design?
Terrific. All right, so if we move, thinking forward then, and back to, I guess, to the other component of the question around product evolution and product innovation. At the moment, where are you guys seeing innovation and product development? What have you seen most recently? What are you seeing in the near future? Damien, do you want to take us away on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think the latest trend we're seeing is like coming together of different technology and also different Web3 solution, including like the CDFI like we just discussed about. So for example, at Binance, we are striving to increase the mass adoption of more like non-adapters. And we are trying to do that by developing like some diversified use case. An example is that just a few weeks ago, we launched a NFT generator powered by AI. It's called Picasso. So a user can upload his or her picture or even a picture of their pets and provide like several prompt words. So then it's like Midjourney, it will generate several different AI-powered picture. And the user can choose one that he likes and make it like an NFT. They can mint it on the Binance NFT platform for free. It's like a combination of traditional C5 platform with the AI technology, and it has gained a lot of popularity. We provide like 100K quota, and all these NFT were minted within 5 hours, and it's not sellable. So it's not really, for further transaction trading. It's just for users who want to have like a customized, tailor-made NFT that they like. So I think a lot of innovation or new service can happen within, the crossover between different technologies, and also maybe the crossover between C5 and DeFi.
Terrific. Why don't we come to this end to Henry? I mean, thinking of product innovation, the process that you must have gone through to bring your product to market must have been an incredible balance to bring into DEX into a regulated world. Can you talk about some of the product development that you had to work through?
Yeah, indeed. We do see the, you can call the crossover or the merge or the combination is really the trend. Because in the past, there's also called the C5, centralized finance product solutions. Now coming to the new same concept about DeFi. But as we said, we don't think they are mutually exclusive to each other. So we do see the value and value creations of combining these two together or crossover. For example, taking our practice, for example, DGFT, we do RWA tokenization. That's the thing we see the value creation is, we love these native crypto assets. Personally, I also love it very much. But it has its own limitations. For example, the choices are limited. The correlations between or among these crypto native assets are very high. So when the market has a volatile or even go to the bear market, then the investors looking at the diversification, then the choices within the pure native crypto area will be limited. Then how about you cross over to combine this technology, which is more DeFi, but introduce some other assets which are less correlated in terms of value. For example, US Treasury, fixed income, or other equity type of assets. Then you combine these together, at least can enrich the offerings in the market. Then give the investors more choices. The last point, and probably I can add on, is what is DeFi? What's the definition of DeFi? People may comment from different perspectives. But one thing I just contribute to one interpretation. DeFi contribute a lot in terms of disintermediation, which means point A and point B, they can interact directly in a transparent and a trust way. So that's the key value of DeFi. So it's reduce unnecessary intermediaries as many as possible. That's the key value of it. So again, we try to do something and practice something to combine together and take the best out of each.
Terrific. And changing the question slightly for you then, Davi, as an investor, what are you investing in? You know, when it comes to product innovation, what are you seeing? Where are you actually putting money to work?
Yeah, so because for us, we invest in all these very native innovations, right? Say for instance, I'm not sure you guys follow the recent development of flash loan. And flash loan is something that with zero collateral and you can borrow billions of dollars as long as your trade execution complete within one block, right? And that's something that only DeFi can enable. Nothing such like this can, so you can find it in CeFi, right? And so there's a lot of interesting application be around flash loan. And then also we have been investing a lot in this decentralized trading experience, say for instance GMX, and you can consider as on-chain Binance. But what makes it different is Binance makes a ton of money from traders, liquidation, trading fee, blah blah blah, but it never distributes to BNB holders, right? But GMX distribute all the income to all the liquidity providers and also the GMX token holders. You are basically becoming the house of the casino. And because we know retail traders always lose, so casino is a really good business. So that's why GMX, although only built by 2 developers, facilitating over 120 billion trading volume within past 1.5 years. And then distributing over 200 million almost to all the token holders and then also all the LP providers, liquidity providers. This is the democracy of trading, right? And then this a democracy of being market maker, right? So because Binance has to partner with all these off-chain market makers like DMM, and so decentralized trading and decentralized liquidity facilitator is something that we are super bullish about. And then apart from flash loan, MEV, and all this DeFi black magic. And I think after the Ethereum Shanghai upgrade, liquid staking gonna be pretty interesting as well. There's a lot of money Lego can build on top of liquid stakings. And so liquid staking is basically you are selling your future yield, because the staking reward is more like a sovereign bond. It's a sovereign treasury income from Ethereum as a sovereignty, right? And it's a risk-free income, right? And so liquid staking basically made these things more composable. And I think there's a lot of this native innovation that even average users can participate. Yeah, and then so that's why, and I think DeFi is the future for the true permissionless economy.
Terrific. All right, to Moses, I guess with the events of the last few months, segregated custody is certainly having its moment in the sun. What are you seeing from product innovation perspective in the custody space?
So with segregated custody, it's something that should have been done last year. And
100%.
It seems like a very common sense thing to do. However, segregated custody has many different flavors, and I think you have to also have transparency of segregation as well. And so for us at Anchorage Digital, we focus on not just the what's next, but the foundations upon what other firms can build on, both in the CeFi as well as the DeFi space. For example, the way we apply our advanced custody solution is to ensure that all funds of different clients are segregated on-chain. And so not on just some database, but it's actually on-chain and verifiable by anyone. So it improves auditability as well as all the benefits of being on the blockchain. So this is how CeFi, a regulated firm like Anchorage Digital, amplifies the benefits of the blockchain for being the foundation for us to advance. So this is something that we will continue to do, as well as improving trust. For example, there's very little trust between organizations within the CeFi space. What we hope to do is to bring back trust by being that anchor and enabling blockchain transactions both from CeFi firms to happen and settle in a trusted manner.
Terrific, thank you. All right, last question, and each of you get a choice. What are you most excited about in CeFi, DeFi, or CDFi, or what are you most worried about? So you get a choice of which way to go. Who wants to head off first? Damien, do you want to take it down your end?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm more excited about future than concerned, and there are probably two things that I'm most excited about. The first is about the integration and the convergence of different technology and services. I think from the discussion we can all agree that decentralization is not binary, and there are a lot of opportunity in the market still for CeFi, for DeFi. And also the example I mentioned, the integration between different technology. So I do believe that there is still a lot of opportunity for us to grow together. And Binance doesn't mind to be the gateway to DeFi services or other services for like new adapter of crypto. And second thing I'm very excited about is actually Hong Kong. So in the past, I think people talk about Hong Kong, New York, London being the financial center of the world. But I think in the Web3 era, it's quite clear that Hong Kong is spearheading the development and effort of Web3. And I think it will also inspire the broader like Asia Pacific region for other markets to follow, to invest in the Web3 ecosystem. These are the things I'm very excited about.
Terrific. All right, Moses, 2 minutes. Which way, what do you think?
Sure, I'm really excited about how Singapore as well as Hong Kong regulators are moving forward. And the reason I'm excited is that it's not just crypto regulation that is being considered in Hong Kong and Singapore. Really what we need for DeFi as well as crypto CeFi to flourish in Asia is being able to be banked because we're early. So crypto companies need to be banked. And this is a definite positive move forward in Hong Kong and Singapore. And I'm very excited of the prospects of a flourishing crypto ecosystem in Asia.
Terrific. Davi.
Yeah, so what I'm most excited about is that especially after this banking crisis and like SVB and like all that. And like first of all, like it basically triggered like an actual movement, right? Because the U.S. has been weaponized U.S. dollar for like too long, and because I consider government as a product, right? And then so there should be competition over there, and we pay our tax as the subscription fee for the government as a product, right? So there should be competition among government and among different banking system or like just like finance system as well. So like that's why I think like this is a golden opportunity for Hong Kong, Singapore, and all the other smaller and but like pretty like innovative, like just like local governor and like officials just like should really take the opportunity. And also this is like just like a waking call. Like a waking call because all this like CeFi blow up and this like a waking call for not your key, like not your coin movement. And that's what we have seen, okay, like the on-chain wallet like numbers skyrocketing and like the sales of like hardware wallets skyrocketing like after the FTS like 3AC like Celsius blow-ups. And because like this is like the first step towards the movement of self-sovereignty. Like a lot of countries out there, they don't have sovereignty, right? So they don't have monetary sovereignty, they don't have actual sovereign rights. And we have seen like El Salvador and all these like up and coming, like even small, but like pretty aggressive and like innovative like governor. So like they can embrace the movement of like actual sovereignty, like just like the actual sovereignty, not just on monetary policy, but also on the basic human rights, right? So it's the basic human rights to govern the property rights of the individual. So I think that's what I'm really excited about because I think, because my Twitter handle, so it's Davi Rock the Fiat one, because I think for this decade, and we are going to see the acceleration of government failure, of like fiat failure. And then so at that point of time, and then so you will understand the value of like not your key, not your coin.
Henry.
From my perspective, I think the most exciting and the most concerning or worrying part actually all around regulations. All around regulations. On one side, we see the regimes like Hong Kong, like Singapore, the government, the regulators, they are more and more welcoming and embracing these innovations, including the DeFi thing, which is very exciting. Which means the mainstream are more and more pro these innovations. But on the other side, we also don't see much clarity in terms of the boundary, which means what to trade, who to trade, how to trade. This type of thing is still not very clear. And also how this regulations come in, on one side, to protect the investors, to maintain the market orders, blah, blah. But on the other side, also encourage and support innovations. This thing we don't see much clarity so far. So put this thing together, maybe the ideal stage is those kind of innovations, especially responsible innovations, will be supported by the regulators and by the regulations. Because innovations is always ahead of regulations and ahead of laws. That's a matter of fact. So you cannot have regulations ahead of innovation. So one side, we want the regulators coming in to maintain the market orders, to control those bad players. But on the other side, we want the regulations to encourage and support responsible innovations. Otherwise, for those players seek to be regulated, seek to be responsible, seek to be sustainable, will be disadvantaged. So it's all around regulations.
All around regulation, terrific. All right, well, I think we're pretty much up against time. So I think do we all agree then that CeFi versus DeFi may not necessarily be the right moniker here, but it's a collaborative and an interactive engagement between the two. Any final closing comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I think like Bitcoin is the biggest. So like Bitcoin is the biggest like DeFi application before DeFi is a thing, right? So it's like non-seizable, immutable money. And I think we have been just like DeFi like ever since the starting point of our industry. It's just like different terminology, like different hype buzzword, but like we have been DeFi for like almost a decade. So like almost for like a decade now. I think the merging between CDFI and like definitely gonna happen, and like this will like impose a challenge for like regulator like to see how they want to make their things like under their walled garden. And I think the future can be a hybrid version, and then but like once we on-ramp like enough like average users like to the crypto native realm, and like that can be a whole new brave world. And so like that is my hope.
So Matt, I'll leave the last word to you. I think that from our discussion, it was very evident to me that crypto has utility.
That's showing its way, isn't it? I think. And look, again, last word to me. I mean, one of the key things that we've seen from, we probably deal with more institutional clients than most people do globally. Yeah. There has been a very key thematic around Bitcoin in the last month, and that it is a hedge to monetary irresponsibility.
So we have to unbank the banked. So like that is like a new slogan, because like 4 years before, so we basically tried to bank the unbanked, but like now we unbank the banked.
Unbank the bank. Right, terrific. I think we're done.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrific.
If I may say is we see the vision of the bridging the gap of both.
Bridge the gap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the fascinating views on the topic, CeFi versus DeFi. Big round of applause to our speakers. Thank you very much. From the rise of Web 1 to the current popular wave of Web 3, every evolution of the internet paradigm leads to a transformation of social patterns. And in this roundtable, we're very honored to invite Taiwan Shen, angel investor and chairman of Meitu, Feng Bo, the founder of Dragonfly.xyz, and Zheng Mi, the former chief strategic officer of Alibaba. They will discuss the opportunities and challenges brought by the evolution from Web 1 to Web 3 for society, companies, and individuals. And Mr. Deng Ming will be the moderator of this roundtable discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest on stage. I'll now pass the floor to Mr. Zheng Mi. Over to you now.
谢谢。各位尊敬的来宾，下午好。这个大家听了一天的这个非常重要的各种各样的内容啊，那我们想呢，稍微换一换节奏啊，也换一换这个方式啊。那我们三个人的共同特点呢？ 就是可能是就整个是跟着互联网一起，这个我们的职业生涯也好，人生最重要的一段啊，就我们经历了整个互联网，从最早90年代初啊，无论是作为这个直接的从业人员啊，这个投资人，还是作为研究者啊，我们看到了整个的互联网到移动互联网啊，然后到 AI 的整个发展。 然后我们也相对比较敏感啊，也跟着看了 crypto 过去这7、8年的发展，所以我想利用这个机会啊，跟大家分享一下这些年来我们看到的各种各样的成功的案例也好啊，失败的经验也好，或者各种各样的江湖的传闻啊，就是说，特别是这两位要知道的，整个的这个。 发展的过程啊，非常的清楚，所以我们可能换一个方式啊，跟大家分享一下，我们从过去学到了什么，我们看到了未来可能的一些发展的趋势，好不好？你们俩谁先来
？OK， 谢谢啊。那个就像曾明讲的，我跟彭博出场的时候，人家经常介绍说是从 Web 1干到 Web 3的人，其实这里看起来是称赞，其实也在说明我们从 Web 1到 Web 3都没有大的成功，所以我们一直在路上。对，那自我表扬一下，就说，因为 Web 1到 Web 2的很多人都不在了，而我们还在，说明我们是一个老兵，老兵不死，只是慢慢凋零。OK， 所以。 的确，从20几年前的 Web 1到 Web 2到 Web 3，时代都在变。我跟冯波跟曾明有幸，我们都在最早期的时候介入。那个，这里我也说一下啊，我今天刚好在网上看到，他说这次的峰会为什么叫 Web 3，也不是 Web 3.0，其实这里面是有区别的。那个。 我们知道，其实 Web 1.0、Web 2.0跟 Web 3.0，其实是从基础的角度去讲 Web 1、Web 2、Web 3。那为什么我们叫 Web 3？其实也是第3代的互联网。对。那这里我用我自己的理解跟大家讲一下那个 Web 3跟 Web 1、Web 2的区别。我们知道 Web 1更多就是 雅虎新浪时代，那么那个时候其实是偏中心化的，你所能接受的一些信息，基本上是新浪、雅虎就固定给你。那么我们到了 Web 2，也就是 Google 百度或者是微信、Facebook， 这时候你开始可以互动，你开始可以有所选择了。但是呢 ，Web2 没有解决的问题是，你注册一个账号，那么也需要微信同意，甚至推特同意。有一天推特不开心了，哪怕是特朗普，他的账号都能封闭，你也没办法告他。那么 Web3 最核心的就是，未来同样有平台，但是你注册账号是不需要平台通过的。第二，你可以自己掌控你的数据。第三，你拥有的这些数据，你可以变现有价值，你是成为平台的价值拥有者，这是最核心的一个变化。我先说到这，那个让彭博来吧。
请大家原谅，我们这里条件比较艰苦，好像在那个这个集市里开会一样的啊，但是这个气氛很好啊，因为隔壁太闹了，我们听不大清楚啊。我们现在我观察下来，大概大多数的参会的这个人员都是创业者，所以这也是香港的一次很好的这个机会，迎接你们来香港创业。我觉得在整个这个行业当中呢，今天我们还是在互联网时代。那互联网时代呢 ，Web3 只是一个代号，就是说下面的这个互联网应用呢，从比如说现在最好的互联网的产品，其实是比特币跟以太坊，对吧？并不是今日头条或者说那个美团。然后呢，下一代呢，在这个基础上呢，互联网的下半场开始，就是说用互联网的形式来管理和交互资产和有价值的这个信息，是吧？对于 Web3 来讲呢，现在还没有真正的 Web3 公司出现，所以我们现在大家都坐在这里，因为为什么那么多人呢？因为大家都没啥事儿干，因为也不知道去哪儿，对吧？大家都在寻找这个方向，所以我们今天只不过是展望这个方向。至于 Web3 是什么，其实我们大家都不知道。我可能曾教授可能知道的比我们多一点我们可以展望一下。
咱们这样啊，就是说，如果在座的大家有什么问题想问的，可以写张纸条或者举个手，好不好？要不然我们3个人光在这说有点无聊。就是说，想看看大家有些什么问题想讨论的啊。
本来我们想聊天的，但是旁边那么热闹，听都听不见。
对。
那个，我觉得，那个波哥，你可以讲讲你当时最早90几年去投新浪，然后后来2000几年，当时移动互联网开始，你都最早投的，当时的心态跟现在投 Web3 有哪些不一样？
当时第一个公司其实是叫雅信 AAC Info， 当时呢是在勒那个 cable， 就是说互联网的这个整体的这个基建，当时有一个像丁健发明的这个什么拨号上网啊，然后呢有那个什么 ChinaNet 啊，就是说当时是在铺那个基建网络，然后就有了什么四川 online 啊、上海 online。那个新浪是后面的，就是从 SRSNet， 当时我们投的是个软件公司，然后呢，软件公司呢看到互联网机会呢，当时我们有一个 BBS， 我们当时就说，把这个 BBS 改成一个让社会都能使用的东西，对吧？所以当时的这个历史阶段很有意思，就是说我们的讨论是，SRS 的这个 Net 是一个专业软件工程师用的，就像现在 DeFi。现在用 DeFi 都是专业的这个人员，都要受过训练的，对吧？那这个 BBS 谁会用呢？一般 consumer 不一定会用。我觉得像未来后来不是有那么什么 BlockCN 啊这些东西，其实DeFi 会经过同样的东西，就是说以后的 DeFi 就跟开冰箱啊，就跟用那个微波炉一样的，和用你的手机一样的，就没有那么多繁琐的步骤。到那个时候呢 ，DeFi 就会成为可能是人类文明最重要的金融手段了，对吧？然后到了这个 Web2 的时候，其实我第一个投资的公司是那个豆瓣。
豆瓣。
对，当时我们投豆瓣的时候呢，还有一个公司，就是当时吴世春创业的时候来找我，然后呢，
酷信。
对他 介绍了一个叫陈华的这个做搜索的，然后我们就做了一个叫酷讯的公司。但酷讯的公司当时呢做搜索呢是把很多没用的信息爬过来，
当时他的 CTO 是张一鸣，
对，然后我们请了一鸣对吧？然后呢试了很多火车票啊、什么旅游啊、什么房产啊这些信息都没有太好的经济价值，后来呢公司就卖掉了。但是呢一鸣呢拿着这个呢就去尝试了做房产，其实也没有做成。但是正好在那个契机呢，就是说正好这个 smartphone 就是移动互联网开始，那移动互联网的那个屏幕小嘛，当时就需要一个新闻的一个头条，大家都看头条，所以呢他就起了个名字叫今日头条，也做了这么一个切入点。所以在座的创业者，你们也想想，就是说其实真正的方法论它不是360度的转弯，是一个微调，微调可以找到一个非常大的契机。可能 Web3 对所有的创业者来讲都是一个很好的机会。
其实我觉得冯波的启发就是说，有时候投得早还不如投得巧。其实冯波是最早90几年、97年当时就投新浪了。那后来因为我们知道2000年泡沫破灭，所以后来就暂停。张一鸣当时在做酷讯的时候，他还第一个投了，但是因为投得太早，后面就没有跟进。
是，我觉得这个在 crypto 行业也是这样，因为我们正在经历人类文明一个巨大的进步，所以这个基础建设也好，这个应用的开发也好，它是一个首先它不是个地方型的，就像互联网，它虽然说有地方的一些adoption， 但是最主要的还是一个全人类的一个基础的一个更新，技术的更新，也是一个社交的革命。所以在这个过程当中呢，千万不要着急。然后也不要因为 crypto 太自由嘛，因为你可以一键就能够像我讲的这个 crypto， 你一键就能毁终身的，对吧？所以说太自由的时候呢，会引起很多这个不必要的牺牲。所以说还是要各位创业者还是要注重最根本的、最本质的创新，然后呢，让这个时代慢慢展开，不要着急。
对，其实我也一样。我当时第一个创业的项目是265，一个导航的网站，在 Web1时代。然后在2008年，当时就卖给 Google， 当时卖了2000万美金，自己觉得很爽了。但后来我一个好朋友叫庞生东，他模仿265就做了一个2345，后来在 A 股上市，最高到400亿人民币，所以呢，有时候就太早套现也不对。那后来我在移动互联网创业美图啦，又太早了。我们知道，就是说，其实最早的短视频是美图出了一个叫美拍，但因为做得太早，然后当时没有认真的去思考，所以后来的机会反而给了快手跟抖音。我觉得。我跟冯波我们的经历呢，其实更多就是失败的经历嘛，也给大家启发。创业跟做任何一个行业，它是一个长跑，有时候不要太计较短期的利益。如果你太着重于眼前的这些价值，其实你不会最终得到最大的一块的。你看我今天来的时候，其实蛮震撼。今天第一次来会场，外面都是密密麻麻的人。给我最大的感受是什么？我现在其实都怕出席这个场合，冯波也是。为什么呢？因为你到这个场合会有无数的人想跟你拍照，想要跟你交换微信。我现在反而怀念20年前，因为20年前那时候我到北京，我谁也不认识。就像你们，我可以在台下静静的去看别人的东西，然后听别人的分享。然后也可以主动去找寻我要的有用的信息，所以其实每个人应该去珍惜，当你还是无名的时候，你才是积累的好机会。对。
我想问曾教授一个问题啊，你研究这个比较深啊，就是在未来的技术革命当中，一个是 Web3，一个应用形式，一个 crypto，加上 AI， 你觉得这3样东西在未来的10年会怎么样交错的发展？
这个讨论未来是最有风险的事情，
也是最安全的事情，因为谁都不知道。
但我自己我觉得每个人用词稍微有点不一样啊，就是我是把 Web3当做一个总的 cap， 讨论未来的一个大的这个技术变革。那么它有3个技术大变革的驱动，一个呢是这个热点总是在变了，一个就是3年前左右最火的 Metaverse 啊。那么 Metaverse 背后的技术呢，这个驱动力其实是 AR 跟 VR 啊。因为我第一次就在讲到投资太早啊。就我第一次去看那个 Magic Leap， 这个现在可能大部分已经不知道这家快要破产的公司。就我看他的那个 AR 眼镜的那个 demo， 我当时看完的第一个感觉就是说，这个不是效果好不好的问题，是你真的分不清将来什么是真的，什么是 virtual 的啊。当然，只是后面因为那个产品可能因为在 energy saving 啊或者 这个 portability 上头有些关没过，最后产品也没出来。但是在当时那个点上，你能感觉到，就是说 AR 技术如果突破了，那么它其实是人机互动的一个大的突破啊。从最早键盘，再到手机的这个拇指输动啊，再到现在开始马上会火的语音啊。而语音也走了10年啊，那么下一步，如果我们通过眼睛可以跟这个AI 或者说整个的互联网互动，那是个很牛逼的突破啊。那么再往后就是脑机互联了，所以这是一个人机交互界面的突破。在这个意义上呢，我觉得 AR、VR 还是一个非常让人期待的技术啊。那如果 Apple 今年的那个产品如果能让大家感到惊艳，那这个事情发展也快了啊。但如果那个产品达不到那个效果，那可能又得折腾个2-3年啊。然后第二个呢，就是我们一直在讲的 blockchain 啊、crypto 啊，整个的这一块的发展啊，我觉得其实差不多到现在也是10年多一点啊，从比特币到现在。成功的地方是我们有了比特币这样一个强大的共识啊，我们有了以太坊这样一个 new computing platform for 这个 smart contract， 但是呢 ，crypto 有点卡在，它是本质上是个生产关系的革命，它提供了一个去中心化的网络，能够让资产的流转、交易变得更加高效，啊，但是现在的问题是没有足够多的 digital asset 来流转跟交易，啊，所以我是觉得呢，这个crypto 也在处于一个从1.0向2.0发展的一个比较尴尬的阶段，啊，一方面 infrastructure 需要继续突破，这是为什么过去2年 Layer 2啊，这个就得到了大家这么大的重视啊 ，ZK 啊这些啊有很多的突破。因为整个的以太坊的生态或者其他的公链的生态，必须解决在安全性跟隐私保护基础之上，必须解决 scalability 的问题、易用性的问题、成本的问题啊。然后在这个基础设施的发展的基础之上，再会形成下一轮的应用的创新突破。所以呢 ，crypto 呢，我感觉本来啊，我去年还相对悲观一点，我觉得 crypto 下一浪的发展。虽然大家当时讲 GameFi 啊 NFT， 但我觉得还没那么快啊。但是过去的半年呢 ，AI 的这个大的突破，我觉得还是蛮让人这个震撼的啊。就 GPT， 我认为是通用人工智能的一次技术突破啊。虽然 ChatGPT 是不是那个最后的赢家啊？是不是产品的这一轮的这个？智能 AI 的产品的终极形态，这个现在还有很大的变数啊。所以稍微总结一下，我觉得 Web3 的3个支柱型的技术 ，AI 给我们带来了惊喜啊，就进入了下一个发展阶段啊。我们会看到未来2年有很大的一个突破。那么 AI 技术的突破，我个人认为呢，又给 Crypto 世界带来了一个非常大的一个价值。 就是 AI 会创造非常非常多的 digital asset， 这些 asset 可以通过这个 blockchain 这个 crypto 的网络啊，给所有的参与者带来更大的价值。那么这两个结合，可能会催生未来的所谓 creator economy 啊，我觉得那是一个很大的一个方向。在那个意义上，我们会迎来 crypto 2.0啊。那么如果 AR、VR 眼镜还需要个2-3年的时间去酝酿的话，我整体觉得，如果可以拍脑袋预测的话，我觉得3年左右，我们会迎来 Web3 的第一次大爆炸，啊，无论是应用还是基础设施，那个时候会非常非常让人兴奋，而那一次的大爆炸，应该能带动整个经济往前走个10年左右。
其实今天香港来欢迎大家来参与这个 Web3，其实是想把自己在新的文明的演变过程当中呢，变更成为一个新的城市。那我们再回顾一下，就是现在的文明阶段，我们处在什么样的文明阶段？现在我觉得是我们正在走向软件文明和工业文明说再见。在软件文明当中，其实我们已经有了第一价值锚定的这个比特币，所以人类用 Internet 创建的最好的这个产品就是比特币，因为以前的商业模式是改变了地方性的，比如说像那个美团啊、今日头条，但比特币改变了人类怎么制造货币，怎么锚定价值，这个是互联网最大的那个产品。第二个成功的就是以太坊，以太坊是一个经济体，它代表了所有未来软件文明的信任机制。在这个基础上呢，我们走入这个文明的时候呢，下面的像刚才郑教授讲的这个 Web3 的大爆炸呢，都是在这个基础上，未来靠着大家创建的无数的新的应用。那这个应用从哪来，我们也不知道，对吧？但是我觉得这个人群、这个时代和这个审美观是正确的，所以
我同意。那个其实 Web3 还是区块链为什么会走得那么艰难？因为它更多是生产关系的改变，触及的是组织结构，甚至是银行系统，甚至是国家结构的改变。所以它一定会碰到原来传统的既得利益者它的不信任或者阻碍。但现在 AI 呢，它刚好是一个生产力的提高，那么放在任何一个国家、一个社会，它都要去拥抱它的。那刚好这AI 刚好都是一个推动 Web3 的一个更大的发展。所以我同意那个教授说的，可能未来这3年它可能会产生很大的爆发，因为前面的互联网，在20-30年的20几年的互联网发展，更多的是信息的改变，并没有去触及价值跟重新分配这个前期。但现在到了，那么就像互联网以前也没怎么改变银行系统，因为最多只是让它效率高一点。但这次美国硅谷银行的倒闭，可能也是一个契机，让这些传统的银行也重新去思考，是不是要拥抱 Crypto 拥抱 Web3这样的一个契机。
今天其实我们没有经济危机，今天也没有金融危机，今天就是法币的危机。法币的危机很简单，就是美元怎么造的、怎么分布的、怎么分配的、怎么储存的这一套系统完全失败了，对吧？完全失败了，就是说对手盘，美元的对手盘就是比特币，对吧？然后呢，比特币创建了什么东西呢？就第一是 decentralized， 就去中心化的治理结构；第二挖矿。第三是那个 blockchain technology， 对吧？就是区块链技术。然后呢，延续这个技术，我们人类才开始了以太坊啊这一系列的。那这个东西它是技术上也是那个社交上的革命，因为用互联网改变了人类以后怎么交换价值，怎么交换劳动力和怎么交换。整个的这个金融服务的体系的，所以这一个大的体系，我们把就像电子商务一样的 ，DeFi 就像电子商务面对那个传统贸易一样的，对吧？所以 未来我们是想把整个金融服务搬上链，那这一个大的这个体系需要很漫长的这个基建的过程。
我补充2点啊，就是很有意思，就是所有的技术革命，以前的技术革命，大家都会说，对于社会来说，我们是 neutral 的，技术是中性的啊。但是只有区块链的技术革命很不一样。区块链是从这个，就从 BTC 啊，我们从 BTC 讲起，第一天诞生的时候就有非常非常清晰的价值观啊，去中心化 permissionless 啊，然后到今天的 network society， 它有一个很清晰的一个价值观，然后是希望能带来一个更好的人类文明，
就是个人是基础，
是
越自由越高效嘛，人类文明的2大发动机嘛，自由跟高效。像互联网已经很自由很高效，但是呢 Web2 公司把它搞得不太自由，但是很高效，对吧？现在 Web3 就是纯自由纯高效，对吧？这样的话，自由高效才是最先进的制度，人类文明永远是朝着先进制度进化的嘛，
对，是的。好，
你再补充第二。
对，然后呢，这有2个问题啊，都很相关。问的比较有意思，就是 Web2 到 Web3 的这个用户迁移，啊，那我觉得就是说，如果大家照我刚才讲的这个 Web3 的那个定义的话，其实这个问题的表述就是大家更根本的问题是原来的 crypto 的那个环境下做不出有海量用户的应用，啊。然后呢，所谓的把 Web2 往 Web3 搬呢，都会发现，那我到底要 crypto 干嘛？啊，但是如果我们真的把所有的都放在一个 Web3 的那个角度来看，那么我们有 AI 技术的突破，有 crypto 作为一个 value network 的一个基础设施，啊，未来可能还有 AR、VR 的这个技术的突破。比如说，我们可以想象，也许2、3年以后，我们会有一款非常震撼的游戏，啊。这个游戏用到了 NFT 啊，用到了所有的价值交换的网络，但是呢，它实际上呢又用到了 AIGC 的技术带来的体验的突破，啊，如果那个时候正好还能用 VR 眼镜看，那就是完全沉浸式的体验，所以你那时候呢会是一个产品达到了一个对于 Web2 来说是一个质的飞跃，而那可能是第一个 Web3 的这样的一个。这个有这个完整的 Web3 的 native 的技术的一个原型，那个时候自然的就发生了用户的迁移啊，所以大家我觉得就是说，过去1年多 struggle 的 Web2 到 Web3 的那个所谓用户迁移，我觉得是个伪命题啊。今天 ChatGPT 出现的时候，2个月就过了1亿用户，没有人去讨论我怎么从谷歌去迁移，大家第一天的反应就是谷歌要完蛋了，啊。所以，当我们那么辛苦的，大家都在想无数的办法，要把所谓的传统 Web2 的用户搬到 Crypto 来，啊，搬到那个窄义的 Web3 来，我觉得那就是走错了方向。我们肯定是没有创造出足够大的用户价值，让用户直接上来。
对，我觉得 Web2 跟 Web3 或者 Web3 跟 Web2 最大的区别是审美观的区别，就是所以说 Web2 的投资人很难在 Web3 有，就是它一个审美的不同，对吧？这个大的迁徙呢已经开始了，就是说至于从人群从哪个桥过呢，大家可能不知道。但是当时电子商务的第一次圣战就是在02年的 SARS 是第一次被大家关在家里，可能你们太年轻记不得这个事。但是 SARS 以后呢，是很多人群第一次尝试电子商务。当时在2000年的时候，我们有一个小组专门讨论会，就讨论什么样的用户是适合电子商务的，结论是全人类，对吧？但是当时我们花了很长时间讨论，今天讨论一样的，说什么样的用户是适合 crypto 的，那全人类啊，只不过是我们还没有很多的应用体系，因为基础设施的瓶颈，比如说当时我们在第一个online 的 video。发到新浪的时候，当时我记得汪岩从那个法国发过来6秒钟的视频，世界杯点球，我们漏了4个小时才漏下来， 然后才看。那你说从那时候怎么设计出 TikTok？ 不可能设计出 TikTok， 对吧？一样的道理，这个人类的这个演变过程，工具文明啊，它是按照一个系统的。我们今天只是在一个早期的系统。
我觉得我补充一下啊，我觉得这个大面积的用户的普及啦，可能会跟一个是硬件，一个跟技术有一定的关系。的确，我们Web1中国互联网在2003年的时候，那时候只有2000万的用户。就2003年4月份发生的那个非典，大家在家里，然后当时其实推动它发展的是游戏，电子商务是后面2年，因为当时盛大出了一个传奇的游戏，这是一个应用的刚好的出现。第二个原因是带宽，因为当时在2003年以前，中国基本上没有宽带用户，那么2003年那时候进入宽带，1个月包月，我记得很清楚。降到100多。
当时最麻烦的是收费，所以就有一堆的 ISP， 你记得吗？
对，
什么小灵通啊，
就04、05年，
短信收费救了互联网好多年，
是的。所以当时的技术跟那个吻合，移动互联网的爆发啦，一样跟2个东西有关系，一个就是早期我一直在说波哥。早期他在04年到08年一直在投移动互联网，但当时他投的是塞班的系统，包括我们知道是塞班，包括那个当时的 HTC， 就台湾的那个，但是因为那个系统呢，因为不够好，技术没前面，我们知道是09年那个 iPhone 的横空出世，包括后来的安卓在10年那个出现以后。整个操作系统带来的巨大的革命，那么，但真正的在我们以中国为例，真正的在中国的普及，其实也是在11年、12年，华为、小米的出现。为什么把手机的卖价成功的降到2000块以下？2000块其实是一直是一个很重要，也就是说一个人的。
当时新手机出来以后呢，装机量。当时装机量最高的一个是今日头条，一个是大众点评，我记得很清楚。
是的，
都是对。因为什么呢？因为你刚买了手机后必须要装机嘛，还有一个 UC Web。
因为对，是的，因为苹果跟安卓刚出来，Google 刚出来第一代，一台都7、8千块，你是很难去接受的。所以我觉得大胆这些车，接下来 Web3，其实我们在谈的这个 Crypto， 就比如说，第一，可能还是需要。这个费用虽然现在的以太坊费用已经降到1、2块美金，但还是相当于10几块的人民币，能不能再降一个台阶？第二，速度再到一个台阶，这是第一个条件。第二个条件，其实就像2003年那时候的游戏，因为游戏是最容易拉动用户的。刚才波哥也讲了，因为04年、05年当时。其实通过 SP 发短信赚钱包月，那个也是属于有点游戏的娱乐的内容。
对啊，我以前跟我一个我投的那个 OKX 老徐以前跟我讲说啊，你知道吗？以后存款大家都存比特币和存以太坊。当时我想得很遥远啊。今天大家再想想，美元的这个银行已经崩塌了这个系统，我们的孩子都不用说了，就我们自己。我相信在3年以后，全球会有20亿人存区块链这个 crypto， 对吧？数字货币。至于它是游戏赚来的，还是跑步赚来的，还是那个打3D 麻将赚来的，这无关紧要。重要的是 DeFi 也会成为全球赖以生存的金融体系，包括 NFT。NFT 是什么 ？NFT 是一个工具，是一个 software。NFT 是全人类最小经济体，它可以让所有的人就像什么，就像 TikTok 就是全世界最小的电视台。那我说1997年，我告诉你说，有一样东西让全中国所有农民都拥有一个电视台的话，你会觉得我疯了，对吧？那的确实现了，对吧？以后一样的，每个人都会有自己的银行，就自己的这个，所以叫什么叫一币是吧？对吧？我不知道这个口号叫什么。所以说，我们现在是经历在一个技术革新，而这个技术革新是人类文明从此以来第一次照顾到每一个人的。原来的革新都是 benefit 那个统治者的，这是全民革命， 主
权个人。
对，它主权个人。
对，在这个意义上，其实我们3个人这个讨论的比较多，也有很多共识啊。我觉得比特币呢，有点像一个横空出世的天才产品，它有点超越了它的时代。然后呢，我们花了很多的时间，把比特币背后所代表的价值观、世界观，再通过这个区块链、以太坊、DeFi 这一轮的创新呢，把它的这个东西往前推进了一大步啊。但是呢，就有一次我不知道跟哪个朋友聊到最后，他就是说反复问一个问题，就是说 crypto 会不会你们所有的共识，最终还是一个乌托邦啊？那我当时说，即使是乌托邦，就人类社会的文明，都是由一次一次的乌托邦的社会实践推动的啊。每一次的乌托邦总会留下一些有价值的东西，推动这个社会往前进。所以呢，就这半年的一个更深的体会，就是特别是由于 AI 的这个发展啊，如果我们放到整个的更 broader 的这个 Web3的这个角度来说呢，我们能看到接下来这几种技术创新汇合之后产生的巨大的爆发力啊！以前我们也讲过，就整个 crypto 就像是给机器人做的，
对
吧？它不是人跟人的一种协同，它更加像机器跟机器之间的协同啊。那么如果 AI 的这个爆发了以后，更多的事情就是机器跟机器之间。就我有时候开玩笑，那个以太坊的 smart contract 是最 dumb 的 contract。因为它就是最简单的命令，但是可以被机器执行的简单命令，可能就是机器世界最 smart 的一个做法啊。所以我们经过了面向未来的这么多年的努力，也许很快的会迎来一次真正的技术大爆炸啊！我这个感觉是越来越强烈。
我记得，我们知道那个技术的发展都会带来大量的那个失业。就像当时汽车拖拉机的出现，就让很多农民都失业。100多年前，美国95%是农民，现在不到2%。那么后来第3产业的发展，信息业的发展，就让那些产业工人都失业。那接下来 AI 如果的发展，会不会让大部分人失业？一定会的，有
更好的就业。
对，这里有2个途径，我觉得可能是 Web3能解决这个问题。怎么说呢？就接下来的失业，那么剩下的80%要干什么事？我发现，因为呢，我举个例子啊，每次我回老家，跟我同学那些50几岁了，我发现他们20年从来不干活，也不饿死，天天打麻将，在我老家是农村嘛，我发现他们不干活也能活着。
麻将是最早的 play to earn， 对吧？
对。那么。这里呢，其实
是真的呀，麻将是最早的 play to earn。
Yes， 是的。这里其实也产生了一点，就是未来可能80%找不到工作，但是呢，他还是能赚钱，哪怕他不干嘛，就像你说打麻将都有人给钱，因为就是 Web3，就我们的所谓的，你玩游戏也给你钱，未来你看电影也给你钱，未来你所有你本来是应该娱乐的东西，通过 Web3，它也能赚钱。那么这其实就变相解决80%的就业了。
其实更好的就业，对吧？在农田里的这种其实是苦力活一样的。
我们还有几分钟的时间，你们2个还有什么想讲一讲的？
我就想说，我觉得香港选择了一个很好的历史时机，欢迎像你们这样的创业者来。我觉得香港呢，因为有深圳，然后有传统的金融，而且有非常勤劳的香港人民，我觉得香港如果延续现在的这种势头，一定会是成为未来经济的一个重要的城市。也祝愿香港和这个那么多支持香港的朋友迎来一个新的金融和科技的春天。
那个其实每一次大的改革来临之前呢，那个大部分人一开始是盲目乐观的。对短期，然后觉得很快就要改变世界各个方面，但是对中长期，老是太过悲观，意足不足。比如2000年，我记得2000年那时候很有意思，当时的王俊涛就是8848的 CEO， 他专门举行了一个叫24小时生存实验，让几个人关在一个
一个房间里燃热机给它电线，能不能生存？那当时我们都能想象，好像互联网就是会让我们不用吃饭，不用干嘛。但到现在我们还是要吃饭。但回头看这20年，互联网的确在改变我们身边所有的东西，我们的通信方式，我们的购物方式，我们的娱乐方式，我们的几乎方方面面。
我们不是打赌了吗？3个人说人类到什么时候不吃饭了？
对，
我说是200年，你说是20年，
这就我下一个问题。我们3个人中午在吃饭，洪波在说，他问他孩子说，再过200年，你还要不要吃饭？他的孩子回答不要。但我跟曾明都批评洪波，我说你太悲观了，200年。我跟曾明的观点是30年左右，我们可能就不再吃饭。会干嘛？我们知道有一个叫
现在日本有150万人口，不出家门的，就是在做自己互联网上愿意做的事情。他可以在那赚钱，然后吃一些非常简单的饮料和食物。
有的是吃压缩饼干，这不够极致。就像现在很多人会轻断食，有一个人已经试验了，就是那个库基维尔起点临近的作者，他最近这10年每天都靠吃药丸过活，有一天可能连药丸都不用，你就充个电就行了。要敢于想象，我觉得未来的，就现在我们的确在这经常会碰到短期的困难。比如我曾经叫很多人朋友说买比特币、以太坊，我后来我自己都很难受，因为他每隔几天就来告诉我又跌了，然后币又跌了。我说你为什么不按年这时间去看待这个事呢？如果你按天按年来看，比特币、以太坊经常它是处于跌的状态，但如果你时间拉长到2009年到现在，它涨了几倍、几万倍。你去看以太坊，2014年出现还不到才几分钱，到现在还涨了几万倍。如果你把时间拉长，是按年为这维度，这个行业还是在飞速发展。那么同样 AI 也是，而且 AI 有可能跟 Web3的很好的结合。在未来的20年，我们在这里人可能你都很难想象20年后你是怎么样，但是您一定是要乐观的、积极的往前看。那么就有一句话说得好，就因为你相信，你最终才会看见。对，
好，谢谢2位啊！我在最后补充一个快速的观点，就是现在大家创业的整体的宏观环境都很困难啊。我觉得根本的原因呢是2015年以后，其实技术进步创造的红利，不足以带动全球经济往前再走一步啊。但是也许在未来的3、5年的各种技术的进步融汇在一起，我们进入下一个技术大爆发的周期的时候，那么那个时候可能会带动全球经济的进一步发展，大家整体的环境也会好很多。好，那我们 panel 就到这。
谢谢
诸位，
谢谢大家。
谢谢3位的精彩分享。Thank you, guests, for an inspirational speech. Thank you very much. So a gentle reminder for all of you, there is a stamp collection page under the logos of the organizer, title sponsor, or co-organizers, Platinum, Gold, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 sponsors in the event brochure. So throughout the festival, you may collect stamps from the stages. Upon collecting all the stamps from one area, and you may proceed to the information desk to redeem a corresponding gift. So please refer to the logo page for detailed information. And each participant may redeem one gift every day. So please be aware that there are only 500 pieces available for each gift, and it is first come, first served basis. All right, so moving on, we will have another panel discussion. So without further ado, may I now invite Mr. Deng Chao, the CEO of Hashkey Capital. He will have a dialogue with Mr. Zhao Changpeng, ZZ, the founder of Binance, to exchange their views on Sapphire. and ZZ will join us online. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Deng Chao to the stage. A round of applause, please. So now I'll pass the floor to Mr. Deng Chao. Over to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been a long but very exciting day. By way of introduction, my name is Deng Chao from Hashgate Capital. Hashgate Capital is one of the biggest and earliest investors in the blockchain space. We are an institutional investor since 2015. We manage over $1 billion, and we have invested over 500 projects globally. It is my great pleasure to host this fireside chat. Normally, I would spend a few minutes introducing the guest speaker, but today, for sure, my guest speaker needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me and welcome CZ.
Hi, Deng Chao. Yeah, how are you?
Hi, CZ. Thanks for taking time to join. Would you like to say hi to the audience first?
Yeah, hello guys. Yeah, so my name is CZ, CEO of Binance, and sorry I couldn't make it this time just due to scheduling conflicts. I've been to Hong Kong many times. I really like it, so I'll definitely attend the next one in person.
Thanks, CZ. A warm welcome. So our topic today will be around CeFi. On behalf of the audience, will be asking questions around the CeFi ecosystem. I would like to hear your thoughts and your insights. First, let's start with what the users cares the most, asset security. In light of the security incidents happened recently and in previous years, some may argue that CeFi is inherently less secure due to its reliance on centralized infrastructures. As we always say, not your keys, not your tokens. So my question is, how do we prevent infrastructure failure, to prevent hacking attempts, etc., so as to ensure, as you always tweeted on your Twitter, users' funds are safe? How do we ensure that?
Yeah, so CeFi and DeFi has very different risk characteristics. Not to say one is safer than the other. It's just that you have to have different levels. For both, you have to take security measures into consideration. For CeFi, you have to use so CeFi exchanges can be made to be very transparent with proof of reserves, which are verified on the blockchain that your funds are there. For example, Binance does this. Our wallet addresses are pretty public. FTX, for example, their wallet addresses were never public. Even Glassnode, other Nansen, they couldn't track their wallets. So with CeFi, if the platform is transparent, it can actually be more transparent than a traditional financial services providers. DeFi, if you can secure your keys properly, then holding your own keys is a good approach. You have more control, you have more autonomy, etc. But many people today, I would say majority of people today, are not able to hold their keys securely, which basically means securing like a 34-character string. If they store it on a laptop, if they use a hardware wallet, they still have to do a backup. They have to secure the backup. So there's quite a lot of stuff involved. They have different risk characteristics. We just got to take that into consideration. I think we shouldn't take a one-sided view saying one is absolutely safer than the other. It's not true. And also, like even when you use DeFi, the wallets get hacked. We were just dealing with one yesterday of a Chinese wallet that has leaked user IP and users were losing funds. So yeah, just different.
Thanks for the sharing. So my second question is about trust, which is also related to security. After the implosion or collapse of some infamous CeFi platforms, when we look around all the news or headlines, it feels like one of the critical elements for CFI is trust, or the lack of trust. So how can we users be certain they can trust CFI companies? What CFI or Web3 companies in general can do to rebuild or to re-enhance trust among users and some other like related stakeholders?
Sure. I think when it comes to trust, there's like at least 3 layers I usually think about. First of all is reliance on technology. We are in a what we call trustless industry where we can use technology to verify. So the technology goes to a certain extent. So if you use Bitcoin or if you use a blockchain, most blockchains, you can verify to a large extent on yourself, whether the funds are there, your own keys, etc. The second layer is for platforms. If you do any type of service or business, even if you use a blockchain, like say, even if you use Bitcoin, you still have to trust the community, right? So trust in that way is built over time, especially for a centralized platform. There's probably there's way more failed platforms or projects, even decentralized projects that they claim than successful ones. There's probably thousands of failed exchanges, for example, in the last 10 years. So trust is earned over time by our actions. So I think Binance has a very strong user trust. And the third part is really just the self-education, risk management. You have to, everything have risks. Centralized platform have risks. DeFi has risks. Traditional financial service providers, banks have risks. Even countries have risks. So you just gotta learn to risk manage. So so it's important not to take an absolute black and white or naive view, but more taking a balanced view on things.
Thanks. After users feeling comfortable about the security and they trust the platform, I think the next question is, I take exchange, for example. Exchange is one of the gateways to get people into crypto or Web3. And I think it's fair to say, and I think the audience will agree with me that many people get into the crypto or Web3 space through Binance. But when we take a look at the user experience, there is still a gap between Web 2 and Web 3 applications, I think, which stops users on board in Web 3 in a way. So could you share some of Binance's practices in improving user experience? From your angle, where do you think CFI can do better to further improve the user experience and bring more people into the Web3 world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally agree that today a Web3 CFI experience is actually not that great from a user perspective. You have to register, you have to do a 2FA, you have to use a hardware key, and then you do KYC, you have to proof of address, and then you still get risk control at different times, right? So the in Web 2, most of Web 2 have no KYC. Right, Web 2 most social media, if you do a search, if you use Google, if you use WeChat, you don't have to do KYC. And so that the user experience is definitely not as simple as just using internet. And also DeFi, right, today, most DeFi don't have KYC, AML processes. That's actually simpler to use. But today, most people prefer to use CFI because most people are more comfortable with using an email, password, and customer support. And if they lose the password, then they can call, they can call somebody to fix it for them, and after certain verifications. So Web 3, because we're dealing with funds, money, user assets, the security comes first. So we haven't got to a point where we're keeping everything super secure but super easy. Security kind of goes inverse proportional to ease of use. So we have to put in many security procedures, which hopefully with the improvements in technology, we can reduce those. Having said that, we have done a lot of work to improve the user experience. Even in KYC, we're now adopting local KYC procedures in each country or each region, so that we use local government databases, we use local vendors that specialize in those solutions. We use driver licenses in particular places. So we're trying to localize the solution as much as possible. But overall, though, I am not satisfied with the user experience in Web3, and I think there's a lot of room to improve, which actually means there's a lot of opportunity.
Thanks, Cici. At the very beginning, you done a comparison between CeFi and DeFi earlier this afternoon. We have a panel discussing on that topic. The initial conclusion I draw is that it is not CeFi versus DeFi, and we may agree that there might be a period of time CeFi and DeFi coexist. Do you agree with that? And how would you say DeFi and CeFi coexist in the coming year or years?
Absolutely. So CeFi is not against DeFi, and DeFi shouldn't be against anybody, right? In a decentralized world, in a decentralized industry, you shouldn't be against anybody. Anybody who wants to participate should be able to participate. And any two people working together is centralization. In a pure decentralized way, everyone should be for themselves. There should be no collaboration. When you form a company, well, when you form a project team, that's centralization. So there will always be certain pockets of centralization in the world, in a decentralized world. And from a DeFi perspective, we are helping to onboard, as you said, we're helping to onboard people from the traditional industries into the crypto DeFi industry. So we're the bridge. We're building the bridge between the two places. And we're facilitating that flow both ways. So we should view that, we should view us as working together in filling different gaps in the technology or in the product services that this world can offer. So, and there's still many other gaps which we need to fill. It's not a competition. There are times where, look, if a person purely uses DeFi, then they're no longer using a CeFi solution like us, which is fine. The more people who use DeFi, the more people who use CeFi. It may not be the same group of guys, which is fine. So I think we just got to collectively grow the industry bigger together.
Thank you. Following on the CeFi and DeFi comparison, I also would like to ask your thoughts on mass adoption, because we've been talking about this for a few cycles. So what would you think would be the trigger of mass adoption for crypto or blockchain technology? And would it be killer app, the application, or tech breakthrough, or even regulation, which I may ask later, or anything else? So in terms of progress, where are we now on the progress?
Yeah, so which one's going to be the trigger, which one's going to be the next trigger for mass adoption is always very tricky. It changes over time. And I honestly admit I don't have the ability to predict. So at the beginning of 2013, I would not have said, Bitcoin is going to take off in a big way when I started looking into Bitcoin. Beginning of 2017, January 2017, I would not have talked about ICOs. I barely knew ICOs from May 2017. But by June, we did our own. And 2017 was the ICO year. Everybody is doing ICOs. Beginning of 2020, I probably would not have said NFTs, but NFTs was all, actually, sorry, that was DeFi. DeFi was all the rage in 2020, by mid-2020. 2021 was NFTs. So at the beginning of those years, I would not be able to say that, and they all happened. So I think it's important that we provide an ecosystem for people to try different things, and different things may take off at different times. Today, if you were to ask me to say something today, I would say the fact that many governments are really trying to control crypto may actually be the trigger to make crypto grow. Because they're trying to control by shutting down banks, shutting down fiat access, putting more restrictions in the traditional financial markets, which actually pushes more people into crypto, which is doing the reverse of what they want to do. The best way to keep people in traditional markets is to lower the fees, make the transactions easier, and make the user experience better. So that would be better. I think the lack of improvements in the traditional financial sectors are going to be the next push, the current push, I think, which we're seeing.
Thanks, Cici. Since you mentioned government and industry, I think I wouldn't let you go until I ask about regulation. So here we're very, very thankful to Hong Kong's support of Web3 in the industry. That's why we are able to get together here for this conference. I think we all agree that along the way, regulators should be involved to set the rules and to protect users. But good regulation framework needs to keep a good balance between encouraging innovation and preventing illegal activities or even crimes. So what would you recommend to regulators in designing a thoughtful and practical regulatory framework? And at the same time, what would be your suggestion to industry players like entrepreneurs here when approaching or interacting with the regulators?
Yeah, so so this is a very, very important topic. I fully agree with you that having no regulatory clarity is the worst. So having bad restrictive regulations are better than that. It's not great, but at least you know what to do. For example, China in 2017 said no crypto exchanges. No, we can get out. And then having unclear ones and then chasing people by enforcement is really, really bad, I think. But better is to have clear regulatory frameworks. And then having clear regulatory frameworks, there are always good and bad in every decision, in every regulatory guideline. There are definitely considerations. So it's how do we navigate to the most optimum balance? And that balance may change over time. So usually when the industry is nascent, it's better to let the industry grow somewhat because we cannot predict, as we said, we cannot predict exactly what's going to be popular or not. Before NFTs are popular, there's no sense making regulations for NFTs. Or there may be something else in the future that we don't know will be popular or not. Today, we can't make regulations for that. We need to let the industry grow a bit. Once the industry is growing and is there are always nefarious players, scammers, etc. So we need to find ways to, how do we limit those guys? How do we prevent people from hurting other people? And then we want to put regulations in play. There's also a very natural tendency to borrow from traditional financial industry to just apply everything to crypto. Crypto is different from banks. Crypto is different from traditional financial industries. Even like simple questions like how do we classify crypto assets? There's many different types of crypto assets. Some may look like securities, some may look like commodities, some may look like utility tokens, some may be something very different. And some may have a combination of those characteristics. So it's very important for the regulators to have a deep understanding of the industry. And I can say, without offending anybody, I think that today most regulators don't have industry experience. If you look at the banking sector, many regulators have worked in banks. But today, most regulators have not worked in a crypto company before. So it's really important to engage in this conversation. So the conferences like this is extremely important. And then on the crypto industry player side, like us, we need to very actively engage with regulators. We can't just say, hey, look, this is decentralized. We're nowhere. So we're actively engaged with governments, regulators all around the world. Many of them are very receptive. Some of them are still skeptical, and that's fine, but we need to engage. We need to have dialogues. We need to have conversations. And we also need to have patience. The first drafts of regulations are likely going to be overly restrictive because from today, very little regulatory framework to having something, it's usually going to be overly restrictive. And then we got to adjust over time and find the optimum balance. So I think that's kind of my view. And we are very openly engaged with regulators all around the world. And we would love to explore more and do more in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Cici. Lastly, I would like to hear, looking ahead into the next year or two, what parts or areas of the Web3 world will get you excited?
I think there's many different parts. I think I focus more on the fundamental applications of it, less so on the what I call experiments or the early innovations. So that's kind of my personality anyway. So once something is proven to be working, I like to figure out how to make it become available to hundreds of millions of people, hopefully billions of people. So I think there's many experiments of which are very fascinating. NFTs in Bitcoin and other newer, faster blockchains, payments in using crypto. But fundamentally, I think we still got to crack the wallet problem. So today, the wallets are not easy enough for people to hold their crypto securely. I think that's the biggest blocker for this for crypto adoption. So yeah, so there's many different things, but for Binance, we are more of a platform provider to have giving people access to crypto, and also giving projects to the access to the crypto ecosystem and crypto users. So that's kind of our view. There's many things I'm very excited about, to be honest.
Thanks. There's a lot we will look forward to. I think in light of time, that brings us to the end of this discussion. Thanks again to CZ for your candid and insight for sharing. May I invite everyone to join me and give CZ another big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Deng Chao. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen, for intriguing and inspiring talk. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, the What's Next for Virtual Access sessions of the Hong Kong Web3 Festival 2023 has come to an end. However, there are many more exciting sessions scheduled for both the main stage and the 4 other sub-stages starting from 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So please scan the QR code on the event brochure or on the sign at the entrance of each venue to view the detailed agenda of each session. And in addition, on the sponsor logo page of the brochure, there is a stamp area under the logos of the organizer, title sponsor, and all co-organizers, platinum, gold, first, second, and third tier sponsors. So throughout the festival, you may collect stamps from all areas across the exhibition hall. You may refer to the logo page for details. With a complete collection of stamps in one area, you may then proceed to the information desk to redeem a corresponding gift. So each visitor may collect once a day, and every gift is limited to 500 pieces and will be given out on a first-come, first-served basis. Once again, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank our title sponsors, OKX and ZA Bank, official supporting organizations, Invest HK, FinTech HK, Hong Kong Science and Technology Park and Cyberport. Platinum sponsors, they are NIA, Filecoin, Neo, Opside, and Quest N. And also our gold sponsors, they are Avalanche, Biocene, Certic, DGFT, Dodo, Dotbit, Fobile, Map Protocol, Meta48, Metalpha, Mix Marvel, Neopets, Nervous, Pedal, Qtum, Save Heron, Save Pow, Zeba, Waterdrip, and ZKP Lab, and more than 100 partners who have supported the Hong Kong Web3 Festival 2023. Thank you so much for your great support. Once again, thank you everyone for your participation today, and we look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow at 9 a.m. morning. See you tomorrow. Thank you.